I'd like to welcome everybody out tonight. It's a great showing. Just want to thank you for being here. My name is Matthew Levesque. I am the president of the Barnstable Town Council. And this is a special town council meeting, open meeting of the voters. This is October 23rd, 2023. And I have 6:02 on my watch. So I just want to, again, welcome you. At this time, I would ask if anyone is recording this event. And if you are recording this event, meeting, please make your presence known. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I would call this meeting to order. And at this time, Town Clerk Ann Quirk, if you could do a roll call, please.
Councilors, Atzelis, Clark, Cullum, Cusack, Rep Grassetti, Levesque,
Here.
Ludke, Mendes, Neary, Schnepp, Shaughnessy, Starr, Steinhilber. You have quorum.
Thank you. At this point in time, I would like to introduce and thank our moderator, Attorney Michael Ford, and he will be moderating our event. So thank you, Attorney Ford, for being here with us. And at this time, I would also like to introduce our Town Manager, Mark Ells, who will be making an opening statement.
Good evening. Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to attend this special town council and open meeting of the voters. I'm Mark Ells, Barnstable's town manager. My introductory comments will try to address the issues and concerns identified in the petition, but my primary role is to listen and to try to respond to your issues and concerns. It's important to note that the town of Barnstable is not the proponent of these offshore wind projects, but rather the community in which the proposed projects would make landfall, traverse our beaches and roadways, and then ultimately connect into the electrical grid. Because the Park City Wind and Commonwealth Wind projects are the two projects identified in the petition, I offer the following overview of the status of each project. Thank you. The Park City Wind project is proposed to land at the west end of Craigville Beach and is in the latter stages of permitting with the State Energy Facility Siting Board. I'll say more about the Energy Facility Siting Board in a moment, relevant to these projects. The town has been informed by Park City Wind that they are terminating their power purchase agreement with the Connecticut utilities with the intent of rebidding on the purchase of power generated for the project. As previously stated, the town has taken the change in the status of the power purchase agreement, along with other substantial changes, under advisement for our legal review and appropriate action. The town council has directed me not to grant any easements to the Park City Wind project before the Energy Facility Siting Board issues its final decision on the project. Once that decision is issued, the town will review it along with whatever the current circumstances are at the time, and the legal department will advise us on appropriate steps. The Commonwealth Wind project is proposed to land at Dowses Beach and is in the mid stages of permitting with the state. This landing site was chosen by Commonwealth Wind without consultation with or input from the town. Commonwealth Wind has terminated its power purchase agreement with the Massachusetts utilities, resulting in the town ceasing any host community agreement negotiations. Further, the town council has formally revoked any authorization to commence negotiations with Commonwealth Wind for a host community agreement. Commonwealth Wind did notify me that they intend to continue permitting for the project, which they have the right to do. The town submitted extensive comments on the proponent's draft environmental impact report, which was submitted to the state pursuant to the Mass Environmental Policy Act. Our comments clearly stated that the town does not support the Commonwealth Wind project at this time. The Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs issued a certificate on October 10th, 2023, which has been taken under review by our town staff relevant to the draft environmental impact report. The proponent is expected to address the issues identified in the Secretary's certificate in a final environmental impact report that the proponent will file with the state. The town and others will then have the opportunity to comment on the final EIR. I'll just note that if you want the link to that certificate, you can go on to the town webpage, go under Town Manager. I put out a report to Town Council, and there's actually a link in there. So if you're looking for that to take a look at it, you can access it there. If you can't, just reach out to me, and I'll get you the information on anything, but certainly on that issue. In general, there are three primary reasons why the town of Barnstable proceeded with negotiating a host community agreement relevant to the Park City Wind project. The proponent secured a lease from the federal government to erect wind turbines off the southeast side of Martha's Vineyard. When I use the word proponent, I'm referring to the particular project. Okay, in this case, it's the Park City Wind project. The proponent had in place a valid power purchase agreement for the project at the time. And the proponent had proceeded with project permitting. While these were reasons for the town proceeding with the negotiation or negotiating a host community agreement, it's important to recognize that the town has no jurisdiction or role in the federal offshore leasing, the power purchase agreement, or the state's procurement process relevant to that power purchase, and authorization for the project itself is ultimately controlled by the state and not the town. The town also has no jurisdiction or control over the project's financing. A host community agreement allows the community to secure conditions, both monetary and non-monetary, above and beyond what would be typically required by a regulating agency. Host community agreements are not required and do not permit a project. It's important to understand that a proponent can proceed without the town's support and without a host community agreement in place. However, with each approval from the federal and state agencies, the town is in a lesser position to make requests from the proponent that are above and beyond what the regulators require from the project. Our host community agreement with Park City Wind included, but wasn't limited to, preventing voluntary connection to the cable by another electric generator that's coming in through Nantucket Sound, mandatory industry-leading containment systems at substations, public safety and environmental protection prioritization, construction to be performed outside of summer season, all parking areas and roadways to be restored to new condition, any disturbance of utilities or drainage disturbed would be replaced, a fee paid as a host community, construction of sewer would be coordinated with the cable installation in public roadways. Now, these are things that the regulators would not require. It's also important to understand the limits of the town's authority and the regulatory framework in which these projects are being reviewed. These projects are reviewed by what is essentially the most powerful land use permitting agency in the Commonwealth, the Energy Facilities Siting Board. This board is appointed by the sitting governor and is charged with review and approval of energy projects if they will contribute to regional electrical needs with minimum impact on the environment and at the lowest possible cost. To achieve this outcome, the Energy Facility Siting Board has the power to override and issue every state, regional, and local approval, consent, permit, certificate, or condition for the construction of a project. Once the EFSB approves a project, no state or local agency can impose a condition on a project that would delay or prevent its construction. Great deference is given by the court to the EFSB's decisions and discretion. Any challenge as to a project must be supported by expert, credible evidence presented to the Energy Facility Siting Board in order to have any reasonable chance of success. It is the project's proponent and not the town that chooses a potential cable route and associated technology for the EFSB review. And it is the EFSB and not the town that approves the siting of the project. Since the EFSB has already approved, and this was the Cape Wind project, if you remember that, that concluded around 2012 or so. Is that 15? Sorry. Not successfully. So they approved that project, which would have routed into West Yarmouth, and then the Vineyard Wind project, which has landed at Covell's Beach. These projects have set a compelling precedent for the Energy Facility Siting Board approval of new projects, landings, and technology. The town has closely monitored the progress on both proposed offshore wind projects, that being Park City Wind and Commonwealth Wind, as the proponent has progressed through the federal and state agencies. The town has taken appropriate steps to address the changes in the status of their progress, such as the termination of the power purchase agreement or changes of other substantial factors related to the proposed project. And finally, while we will make every effort tonight to address the issues and concerns you may have, the town attorney has asked me that I make clear that there may be questions we cannot answer as they may involve confidential legal matters, and we don't want to waive any of those privileges. And so basically I wanted to qualify that in my statement to you. There are some things we won't be able to answer. Take them all under advisement and hopefully get back to you with an appropriate answer. And that concludes my opening comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ells, and good evening. It's a privilege for me to be able to moderate this special town council open meeting of the voters meeting. It reminds me of the town meetings that used to be held in the town of Barnstable. I recall with fondness attending those on Saturday mornings with your longtime prior moderator, John Alger, who in part was an impetus to me to get involved as a moderator in the town where I live. So I think this is a very productive process. And so I have worked out with the town and the town's legal staff a set of very simple rules that we need. You have to have rules to be able to run a meeting like this, that I would ask you all to follow strictly if you can. There are 5 topics that were in the petition that was submitted under the appropriate provision of the Home Rule Charter, Section 8-9, and we're going to cover all 5 of those topics. The way the agenda is set up, we've allotted 30 minutes for each topic. The first part of that 30-minute discussion will be provided to you, the voters, the petitioners, I'm sure among you, to put forth questions, comments, statements. And around the middle of the 30-minute mark, about 15 minutes, depending on where we are with your comments and questions on that topic, we will then turn to the town for a town response. It is the plan that we limit each topic to about 30 minutes, and that 30 minutes consists of 15 minutes of public comment, questions, statements, and 15 minutes of town response. In the event there's additional time, we can go back if there were folks who did not get an opportunity to speak on a particular topic. I'm also advised by the town that if we get to that middle marker of 15 minutes or so, and there are still many people that want to speak to the issue, then from the town standpoint, it makes sense to hear you, the voters. We'll extend that to 20 minutes and just leave 10 minutes for the town to respond. They're going to keep track of all questions and certainly have committed to try to answer any questions they don't have time for tonight at a subsequent meeting of the town council. So in order to kind of lend some order to these comments, we have 2 microphones, one in this aisle here and one to my left. I would ask anyone who wants to speak to use one or the other microphone. And I would ask that if somebody is at the microphone and you're looking to speak, then you get in line so that I'm not faced with, in a large hall such as this, trying to see hands up or people standing. The rule is, if you want to speak, use one of the 2 microphones. I intend to alternate between them. I'll start with the one on the right and go to the one on the left. And if you're in line at either one of those microphones, then I will recognize the next person in line. And continue on in that fashion until there's nobody more in the lines, or we've reached a critical time period and we've got to move on. Again, it's our hope and plan to do all 5 topics. So with that, let me suggest some recommendations if you're going to address the meeting. One, obviously you must use one of the microphones. Introduce yourself so folks know who you are, the village you're from. That's also important because it's an open meeting and the town clerk, who's immediately to my right, is required under the law to take minutes. And so your name and your village are important. The council is hoping to get comments from residents of the town. And so mentioning the village you're from will be important. Next, please be civil. Try and keep your comments without personality and address the topic that we're on. I know some of these topics, having read through them, are related to each other, and so naturally we're going to have some comments that could be applicable to topics 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, and I understand that, and we'll certainly give some leeway in that regard. But I think we can accomplish more, and from the petitioner's standpoint, try and address each one of those issues if you keep your comments or your questions to the topic that we're trying to discuss in that particular segment. So with that, let's start with topic number one. Topic one is onshore transmission line routes. Let me just change glasses here. On public land for both the proposed Park City Wind and the Commonwealth Wind projects. And that's the general topic for number one. Obviously a very broad topic. So I'd ask first if there's anyone from the public, and I see some people already standing, so I'll observe the rules that I reiterated. I'm going to start with the microphone on my right. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. My name is Kathleen O'Connor. I'm from Centerville, and I'm asking this question on behalf of Thomas Scanlon of Barnstable. Does the town believe the landing of electric transmission cables of this size and magnitude under small public beaches in our small town is more appropriate than landing them in commercial or industrial areas? Norway, a large user of offshore energy, only allows offshore cables to land in military or commercial or industrial districts.
Okay, and so what we're going to do is keep track of these questions, and when the town's response comes, I'll look to the town, I'm trying to keep track of them myself, and see if we can't get you a response to that question.
Thank you.
And we'll proceed accordingly. To my left. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Sandy Jones. I live in Centerville, in the village of Centerville. The question I have for the town council is, are you aware on September 18th, Park City Wind went into a notice of option agreement, which is for 13 and a half acres, and the address is 3640 Falmouth Road. The address is deceiving. I walked it this morning. It's a dirt road. It opens up. It's about 4 or 5 acres on Mill Pond, and it actually is behind a residential neighborhood, Acadia Drive, which is in Marston's Mills. On the other side of the property, it butts 3 parcels that the town of Barnstable owns, and I would hope if the town was aware of this particular transaction, that you would be interested in purchasing that land for open space. But my question is, this clearly would be an area for a substation for the Osterville Commonwealth Wind Project, and I'd like to know if the town was aware of it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
This gentleman here to my right.
My name is Bob Schulte, and I live in Centerville. I recently attended the October 12th local comprehensive planning meeting. This meeting was open to the public, and a video is posted on the town website. During that meeting, Assistant Department of Public Works Director Rob Steen provided an excellent update on the town's comprehensive water management plan. During Mr. Steen's presentation, the subject of the town taking on engineering projects in-house versus using outside consultants was discussed. In his comments, Mr. Steen talked about the amount of extra time and efforts the town needs to spend on these projects, and he commented on the quality of work being done by the outside engineering consultants and referred specifically to the Vineyard Wind project. Let me play you the 1-minute clip of Mr. Steen's comment from this public meeting. Again, this is posted on the town website.
One model was the traditional, what most communities do, which is you bring in consultants and have them do this for you. Now, we didn't use that model for the CWMP purposefully. We did the CWMP ourselves in-house. The second model was we try to take on as much as we can in-house and manage the system that way. When we looked at the numbers for that, and I can dig that study up again if someone's interested, there was a significant cost savings to doing it in-house versus going out-of-house. Additionally, what we have found since then is that out-of-house is in no better position than we are in terms of hiring right now. They are equally as troubled. And what we have found is that we are having, on the projects that are out-of-house projects, Vineyard Wind being one of them, we're having to sit on those projects almost more than our in-house projects. And we're actually having to invest more time into those that are in-house projects because what the consultants are producing is crap. Excuse my French.
I took a look at the filings for both Park City Wind and Commonwealth Wind, and Avangrid plans to use the same engineering consultants on both of those proposed projects. My question to the town is this: how do you expect citizens to feel comfortable and support the horizontal drilling under our beaches, the micro-tunneling under the Centerville River, the digging up of our streets in the historic hearts of our villages and residential neighborhoods, and the building of enormous power substations on top of our wellhead protection areas by companies whose consultants' work is described by our own assistant DPW director as crap. Thank you.
Before I go to this gentleman here, I neglected to announce one important rule, and that is that there is a time limit of 4 minutes for each speaker. No one's come close to that at this point, but I just thought I'd throw that out there because the goal, again, is to hear from as many of you as we can. Gentleman to my left.
My name is Gary Peters. I'm from the village of Osterville. Please explain why the electric transmission cables cannot be routed from the wind turbines along or through the Cape Cod Canal directly to existing power station or grid connections in Sandwich. The Sandwich Canal option would avoid all of the beach issues, water supply protection issues, and the digging up of our streets. Anticipating a response, at the most recent Avangrid presentation at the library, Avangrid executives were asked that question. Their answer was that the power station at the canal is not currently capable of taking on those transmission lines because of their present infrastructure and requirements. However, we also have information that the company owning that facility is quite capable of and very interested in making whatever changes are necessary to bring those cables to the canal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gentleman to my right.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kenneth Nozzle, Centerville. I have comments pertaining to how I see Avangrid conducts their business as they see fit. I wish that from our precinct 2, we had our council person here tonight, but apparently we don't. With all the calls for transparency, my questions concerns Avangrid's misleading recent radio ads on local Cape Cod radio. The voice in the ad says power from Avangrid's wind farms will provide enough electricity for homes on Cape Cod. Print information from Avangrid says each 800 megawatt wind farm will provide enough power for 400,000 plus homes. My question is, and I don't know if any reps from Avangrid are here tonight, my question is once and for all, how much power, if any, would be going directly to power homes on Cape Cod? When I attended one of Avangrid's public info sessions, I asked, and I was given a physics lesson on electrons. My question was never answered. Please give me a number of homes on the Cape that will be directly powered by an Avangrid wind farm. Since I believe most town residents are not informed of critical problems that could arise, and town officials are allowing Avangrid's cables and infrastructure to go through our beaches and streets where other better access routes are available, Barnstable should be getting some of the power. Or were the ads worded deceptively and made just to get public support to allow these projects to go forward? Thank you.
Sir, I should tell you that I'm aware there are Avangrid representatives here tonight. However, this is a meeting for you, the voters, to speak and for the town to respond under the charter. My understanding further is that your council is planning a separate session in which specific questions can be addressed to Avangrid. So you probably will not hear from Avangrid this evening. You'll hear the town responses to town questions. Again, just to remind you, we're on topic 1, and topic 1 is onshore transmission lines on public land for both projects. That's the subject of this first 30 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Bean. I live in Osterville. And the question I'm presenting tonight, has the town factored in or even considered the hit to the property tax base is a result of lower valuation for homes along the transmission cable routes. And on a side to that too is the disruption to local businesses, small businesses along the transmission routes.
Yeah, we got it. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Tim O'Neill. I'm a resident of Kentuit.
Sorry, I didn't recognize you, Tim.
Good to see you.
Wrong glasses on.
I am a member of this town's planning board. I am here tonight speaking on my own behalf. The question that I have for the board, and maybe to address the room as a whole, because it was brought up in the presentation by Town Manager Els, is what power the town has in any discretionary choice, and maybe just to be clear and a simple statement to this room, to support or not support these projects, in that it seems like the only choice for this town is if they want a host agreement or not. It seems to be there's no discretionary power in this town to not have these wind projects. So the only choice is if there is a host community agreement or not. I think the room would benefit from a very simple understanding of that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, sir, to my left.
Good evening. My name is Russell Norris. I live in Green Dunes, just off of Craigville Beach Road in West Hyannisport. I'm a retired Lutheran pastor, but I also hold a degree in electrical engineering from MIT. And I'm a member of the Faith Communities Environmental Network, representing more than 40 churches and religious communities across the Cape. As we focus on transmission lines tonight on public lands, I would like to share a few words from my own experience and how that experience relates to the question we're dealing with. For most of the last couple of years, the folks in my neighborhood had to deal with construction, with streets torn up, first to put in a new sewer line and then a new water line, but finally, third time, tore up the street to bury a power cable from Vineyard Wind running down the middle of the street. The Colville Beach parking lot, where I like to walk my dog, was mostly closed as well by the cable being brought to shore there. Now that was over a 2-year period. In reflecting on the Vineyard Wind project and its impact on my neighborhood, I see it on the whole as more positive than negative, in spite of the mess and the inconvenience. First of all, the residents along Craigville Beach Road and Strawberry Hill Road now have new water and sewer lines largely paid for by Vineyard Wind as part of the contract with the town of Barnstable. Vineyard Wind also repaved the roads when the project was finished, leaving them in better shape than we had them before. The parking lot at Colville Beach has been repaved. There's almost no trace of the cable that now lies buried there. And all of this at relatively little cost to the taxpayers. I like all of that. I appreciate new water and sewer lines and the repaving of the streets. But I really see the long-term benefits of this as being more significant. Vineyard Wind and the wind farms that will eventually follow here will help to lower the cost of energy. And not just for Cape Cod. Energy is like money put in the bank. It's fungible. You can't say where it's going. It's in there. And it will also provide energy for Massachusetts and the entire Northeast. At the same time, those wind farms will help us reduce our carbon footprint and our dependence on fossil fuels that, if unchecked, will wreak terrible damage to our beloved Cape Cod. In view of all of this, I believe the long-term benefits of these projects and others that will be proposed down the road, I believe in them and I support them. At the same time, I believe that local communities like ours should have input in these complicated issues like routing and siting. And this community gathering is an important way for all of us to have a say in these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hi, Marianne from Osterville, but I've been going down to the beaches, Centerville as well, probably over 40 years now. And the idea, everyone needs to know that these cables have had serious issues of eroding, so much so that on Block Island, they had signs up on the beach that said, beware of electrocution. The Danish partner Ørsted got out due to undersea issues. You know, you're talking about taming Mother Nature for this, and we all know here on the coast that cannot be done. And my father, who is a disabled veteran, Brown University graduate, was denied admission to walk, his daily walk at Craigville Beach, because it was blown up from the water's edge to almost the parking lot. 3.5 years later, he had died waiting to get back on that beach for his daily walk, because, you know, when you're pushing something, you need a flat surface. We go to Dowses, we go to Craigville. These little villages, so you can't imagine what that looked like, to see your beach completely blown up. But I also want to speak for these small businesses, which I have no investment in. That is what makes these beautiful towns of Osterville, Centerville, Marston's Mills, Cotuit unique. Chamber of Commerce, that is what is on all of your marketing material. The beautiful villages, the unique stores, not the chain stores, not the Floor and Decor. Hyannis is a very different place. It has its good and its bad, but very different. These businesses, you need to stick up for them. These small businesses, this is what my friends want to come see. And these transmission lines, also, there's so many local, state, and federal laws that are being violated. I mean, we have a historic tree preservation. I want to speak for the trees, Dr. Seuss, but I mean, Craigville, I mean, I'm on these local streets all the time. Centerville, that is one of the most beautiful streets in the world, the little white lights on, and these 200-year-old trees. There's no way you can go down our narrow roads without cutting the root system, which will eventually kill these beautiful trees. And yes, you are mitigating, favorite word, these issues. You cannot, yes, they even said to us one of the meetings, Big Win said, oh, we'll grow more, we'll plant trees. And we said, you cannot, that is such a non-New England thing to say. That's a Denmark, Spanish, and Chinese thing to say. That is not a New England thing to say. You beautiful 200-year-old trees. My son, you know, happened to be here driving around the other day, has not been here in a long time for various reasons, and said, oh, the trees are beautiful. That was his comment as a young man. So, you know, this is up to all of you. You have children, grandchildren. The trees, plus, if you want to get into the CO2 debate, they are the ones providing that CO2. I don't know how you can put these transmission lines. I do not want to sit on EMF producing lines on the beach. I do not want to swim over them. I mean, are you kidding me? And, you know, I have something to say about sea life, but this is, you know, it just blows my mind. The Historic Preservation Society said this area was way too fragile an ecosystem years ago to even consider this. But now that things are much more fragile ecosystems, as we all know, none of you could argue with that, it's being pushed through.
So ma'am, you're at your 4 minutes, so try and wrap it up.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Molly Sproul, and I live in Centerville, when we have for 32 years. The heart of the village of Centerville is historic, as we all know. Historic elements are critical as we consider the potential damage to our streets, our trees, our homes, and all from the Park City Wind project. Avangrid has repeatedly made verbal promises to residents who have expressed concerns about century-old foundations, and has promised pre- and post-assessments of all properties along its preferred route. However, the company has avoided giving any specific answers to our question. My question is, when will Avangrid provide provide residents with written contracts specifying the full coverage of damages that will be provided. We suggest nothing be left to verbal promises from Avangrid. And I guess that sounds as though it should be directed to Avangrid, but I'm asking in any negotiation that our concerns be protected by our town, our concerns about our streets, our trees, and our foundations, and that those concerns be, that the promises be put in writing, that they're not verbal promises.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
My name is Zenas Crocker. I live in Osterville, the executive director of the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition. Many people know me here. I'm interested in clean water. What I'd like to hear from the town is the finance plan to put in the sewers, which we are currently under mandate to install, thank goodness. I believe it's almost $1.5 billion. I'd like for the community to understand why and how dollars may be important in that cause. Should we be able to show that they're not going to do harm, and I understand a lot of the issues that are being brought up here today, they're very important, but if we can show that it's possible, should the community look at what the financial implications are? For instance, my guess is we're going to face a series of tax increases, not one, not two, but many, in order to pay for these sewers. We're also going to face new water lines in town because many of the town's water lines, the drinking water lines, date from the 1930s. These also have to be replaced at huge expense. I would just remind everybody that in the 1970s, Ted Kennedy managed to bring a proposal before all of Cape Cod to have federal dollars pay for 95% of the sewering in all of Cape Cod. What did we say? We said no. Thank you anyway. Well, I'd like to know how we might get to yes for dollars to pay for clean water. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, to my left.
Hi, I'm Jan Kubiak, and I am from Hyannis. And I think, like, when you look at the United States, and we're the beginning of wind, and it's been around for a very long time. And the reason that we're the beginning, this is just my opinion, is that from 1980 to 1989, we continually took away the subsidies for wind and solar. And the wind experts went to Europe. And that has absolutely exploded in Europe. The most recent one off the coast of England is called Dogger Bank Wind Farm. It's under construction. It'll be 277 wind turbines. And it already has started to put clean energy into the grid. And my point in this is just one other one. With as much as is in Europe, China has already doubled the wind capacity. And are we looking at this seriously about climate crisis? And we think we've got all the time in the world to do this or take this another place? If they're saying this is safe, we should do it. Time is of the essence. And I just want to say, places where I think that you could really see a lot of answers, at least from Commonwealth, are in their frequently asked questions. They'll talk about the electromagnetic fields, and I can't remember everything in there, but I thought it was very well done and keeps you from reading these extensive reports that they have to do. And what else was I going to say? Oh, another really valuable thing to do is to watch the video of the Barnstable Conservation Commission. And they are, I just thought it was wonderfully civilized between Avangrid and the commission, that I was very proud of everybody in that thing. And they were showing you exactly like this new technology that goes 50 feet under the beach. And, you'd never know it was there. If you go over to Covell's Beach now, you'd never know it's there. So, I hope you'll look at these things more in depth, and definitely the reason I'm in such a hurry about the climate is that carbon and methane accumulate. They don't dissipate readily. And so the longer we wait, the worse our situation happens. Might not happen on Cape Cod. It might happen like what happened in Pakistan. They didn't even cause climate change. So the global nature of this is very important. It doesn't bother me whether or not the Cape gets this power. What bothers me is that we are addressing this global situation.
Thank you, ma'am. So let's take stock of where we are. We're on topic number 1. We've gone about 22 minutes. We were going to go 15 and maybe 20 for the proponents. I think it's time probably to get our first 12 comments addressed by the town. My suggestion to those who are in line is that topic number 2 is very closely related to topic number 1, and I think you can probably keep your places, and I'll come back to you when we start topic 2. So
I have another meeting to go to at 7 o'clock.
I think we have to move to the next. You could submit your question in writing, but I think we have to keep moving along.
I'd like to speak before, I'm not going to leave, but I want to participate in public comment for the dockside, which is tonight also.
I understand, and we'll try and get that in. I think we need to move, however, on topic number 1 to town responses. We had 12 comments, some of them in the nature of questions, and I'll look to the town to begin to respond to those. So we did give 5. We gave 7 extra minutes. Right. Town Manager Ells, are you going to lead the town response?
Thank you. Mark Ells, Town Manager. I'll do my best to address each. The first, and I'll take them in the best I can remember the sequencing of the order. Does the town believe that landing the electrical cables is it appropriate where they're proposing to do it?
Right, her comment was, should it be in residential and open space areas, or should it just be in industrial areas?
Understood. So, as I explained in my opening statement, we don't necessarily get to say where that occurs. Are we opposed to that? No, we are not. When we saw that this was proceeding, when we began to look at federal and state policy, we began to look at what is referred to as a planned approach versus an individual cable approach. I've reached out to the state to continue these discussions. We're still hoping to advance those discussions. In the meantime, they have proceeded with, the proponent has proceeded with individual cable landings. And so it is permissible, and certainly, they have the ability to do that. But no, we're not opposed to looking at that. Absolutely not. I do think, though, your continued attention communicated to the state is very important, okay? Please, after tonight. If you want to talk with me more individually or in groups, more than happy to do it. I hope that answered that question.
Second one was a yes or no, I think. Is the town aware that PCW allegedly has put under option?
I'm not specifically on the parcels referred to, but now that you've said that, I will reach out. A lot of our communication with Commonwealth Wind, when they terminated their power purchase agreement, ended in a back and forth dialogue. So certainly we review what they're filing. They may have looked at it and talked with staff, but I'm not aware, and I don't believe legal is aware. They're saying no with that, but now that you've said it, we will certainly look into it. We do have a back and forth, though. There was a question about, and I might be jumping ahead, sorry, about discretionary power, but absolutely the town has the ability to interact with any proponent that comes to the community, but we have to do it within our authority, okay? On these wind projects, the proponents have come to us and have discussed this with us. But what we try not to be is an advocate. We try to be, quite honestly, an objective reviewing party of what they're proposing, because the majority of what they're proposing to do falls outside of our authority to approve or deny. We represent you and the town of Barnstable, okay? And this is a proposal within the town, but they do have rights. Okay. All right, next one. What's the next one, sir?
Cape Cod Canal, can you take the cables over to the Cape Cod Canal as
Again,
opposed to
links back
bringing
to
them?
what I said before. I think around 2020, I had looked at a study, and when I had the pleasure of meeting with the Saved Houses Beach people, that was one of the first things they brought up and asked me if I had seen it, and I said yes, and tried to engage in a discussion about how planned landings might proceed from basically the coast of Maine down to the Carolinas, quite honestly. I don't think there was a uniform look at that by states. I think more and more states are getting together to try to look at policy that would have that the first way they might do it, perhaps. The canal is, I don't know the technical capabilities of the canal, but I know that I'm still reaching out to the Office of Executive Environmental Affairs. I've gotten help from our representative Diggs and Julian Sear, and trying to advance those discussions. So that's not a solution to this one at this point. It may be in the future, but that's the best answer I have at this point.
Okay. The next question, I think, was on the accuracy of the representations about how many homes would be electrified as a result of the Vineyard Wind project. And it was really directed more at the consultant for Vineyard Wind, and I think you've advised me, Mr. Ells, that council intends to have a workshop on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have nothing to do with the communications that have gone out, even though I know my communications director said, well, this sounds like the town of Barnstable helped write this. We did not, so I can't speak to the accuracy of what they're communicating. They are a private company, and they can communicate things both accurately and inaccurately at times. So what we will do is I'll make sure that any of these questions related to a proponent, when we do a workshop with them, gets asked, okay? And we'll, at least you can hear what that response is.
Right, that's what they're looking for. Next was on taxes. And
yeah, to our knowledge, there hasn't been. So certainly we've got cable in the ground running along with sewer and other road improvements from Colville's Beach up Craigville Beach Road to Strawberry Hill, up Finney's Lane, through the park, and up to a substation at this point. Certainly there's been no indication of that, but I also understand the concern relevant to all the issues that you've brought up, that if this isn't done the way it's designed and that the regulators approve, it could be problematic for the community. So we're certainly attentive to that, but at this point, we haven't seen that be the case along the existing route, certainly.
Right. Next question was on, to the extent it was able to be answered at a yes or no, when one of these projects comes to the town, can the town just say no? Do we have any ability as a town to simply stop a project?
I don't believe so, but I also believe that the state listens to us and the proponent listens to us. You can imagine it is certainly to the advantage of a proponent that the community that would host them would be understanding and supportive of what they're proposing. But in most cases, no. And I think I outlined that in my opening statement, but there are certain places where we do have authority. Okay.
The next one was more of a comment about the positive aspects, the gentleman from Green Dunes, so maybe we'll skip over that one. The next one was, there were two, really, that were related, and really focused on some of the aesthetic issues with respect to these the cable projects that are related to the wind projects and how they affected trees. We had two speakers that were really focused on that, and we're really looking for, when the town negotiates those issues, that they get promises in writing. Those were those comments, Mr. Ells.
I think that that is a wise statement. I think that regarding streetscapes, that when this was advancing, and remember, Park City Wind still hasn't been approved, nor has the route been approved by the state, okay? So, but backing up, we've had very good discussions with the proponent about the streetscape, about the sidewalks, certainly that they're recognizing that construction of any kind in a roadway can have impacts beyond the immediate roadway, and have said that they will do the investigation, pre and post conditions, and correct, things that are caused by their project. And I concur, we do not have all of that in writing, nor do we have a final number relevant to streetscape improvements that might result along a route. We have an agreement, we have a general wording in the host community agreement for Park City Wind that states that they will restore the streetscape. And now we have a little bit better design criteria for what that is, and we're putting dollars on that. I do expect to have all of that in writing included as we approach if this project advances and gets approved.
And one of the speakers who was speaking on the subject of trees also included the stability of foundations of houses that were near the road and their stability in the future with the installation of these cables and how those were being addressed.
That was part of part of the response I just gave, but
okay.
The proponent recognizes that. They were going to do pre and post assessment of that, and then whatever was deemed their responsibility, they would mitigate as part of this, and we'll certainly, I'll have legal draft something up that we can bring back to them for consideration as this advances.
And then finally, Mr. Crocker made an observation about the need for revenues for the clean water projects that the town is facing. So,
well, so why did this advance originally? Several reasons, but one of the primary were that we're proceeding with our comprehensive wastewater management plan. We're going to be opening up roads. When they initially came to us, they being the proponent, when they initially came to us, we'll start with the first project, the cable route would follow where we were sewering. Not necessarily the exact phasing sequence, but what we did was we advanced our design for sewers and roadways that were going to receive those sewers, so that if we opened up the road, we would do our sewer, which is typically the lowest utility within the roadway when it's a gravity sewer. And then as part of their project, anything they disturbed, water, drainage, the physical roadway itself, the installation, obviously, of their own concrete conduit with an insulated cable in it, then the restoration of the road to new conditions, and in the case of Park City Wind, the restoration of the streetscape are all included in that. So there isn't and never was a direct link between doing sewer expansion and whether or not one of these projects proceeded. The opportunity was to have them, ultimately, if it was just sewer in that cable, restore the asphalt. When we begin to look at these roads, it's millions of dollars for that falls on the proponent and not the town. The host community agreement in the first project was always for water resource protection. It was never for funding sewers. Town council voted it that way. Every discussion of the dozens of public meetings that we held, that's how it was discussed. It has been subsequent to that that discussions have begun, and mainly by others and not the town. And I'll just take 1 second for a plug here. If you have a question, individual or group, and you want to talk to me, please reach out to me and ask me. I'll give you the answer that I have. It might not be the one everybody wants, but please ask me. I think many of these discussions link the two projects together when in fact they're not, except for the fact if they're going to do this and they end up paying for the roads, we save money on asphalt.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ells. So that concludes the town response on topic number 1. Hold on 1 second, please.
Well, I will try. Thank you, sir. It was the question about poor quality consultant work. And I believe Mr. Steen's statements were really focused on construction project management and oversight, if you go back and look at and listen at that presentation, not necessarily engineering. But I think the gist is that right now, everybody, private and public, there's a shortage of engineers out there for projects. So we feel most comfortable doing a lot of that work in-house, at least for the earliest stages of it. And then when we get into specific expertise, we try to find consultants that have the resources in place, but also that also are available to proceed with that sort of support service. So.
My apologies for skipping over that, sir. So let's see where we are. We're on topic 2 now. It's related in part to topic 1. We're already at 7:04. We were supposed to start that topic at 6:45. So that's fine. We had a lot of good discussion on topic 1. Let's get to topic 2. Let me just repeat it so people can focus on it. Environmental implications of the proposed PCW and CW projects on Craigville and Dow's beaches and the estuarine ecosystems identified in Barnstable's Coastal Resource Management Plan as the Centerville River System. So we'll start again with the right-hand microphone. Yes, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Adam Myrick. I live in Osterville. So I have a couple of quick questions. One, is the town council or town council's council aware of any instance where Article 97 has been overridden for a single-use allotment, effectively? Because our legal review has found no such case, which would allow the town to say no for projects that have not already been voted to give away 97. Number 2, I wanted to ask if, I think it was great, Mr. Ells, that you just clarified that the sewage is not linked with the wind farm. And I agree with Z's comments earlier. Clean water is super important. But I do take issue with the comment by the gentleman earlier talking about how the majority of it is paid for. I think it's very important to say that the maximum possible benefit that the town accrues over the other 2 agreements is around $80 million of nominal dollars, which is severely backloaded, versus a sewering cost estimate of $1.4 billion, which is a couple years old, and as we know, inflation has taken those numbers up. So I just wanted to put that information in the room. So majority of, at least, I didn't go to MIT, but 1 or 2% is not a majority. So I just wanted to clarify those numbers are correct in terms of what you guys see as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman to my left.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here. My name is Raymond Cormier. I'm a Hyannis resident. It's obvious that the issues involved here are concern over elements of history, culture, and environment, and the place we love to live in here. And it's a little unnerving, it was a little unnerving for me to hear tonight that the state or other bodies can just overrule whatever requirements the town wants to put in place. That being said, it seems that the negotiations for remuneration take on even greater importance. That seems to me the great power the town would have. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And I guess my question is, how did we come up with the figure of, I think it's per project, $16 million in remuneration? And is that indeed Does the board feel that is sufficient, considering possible serious damage to historic area like Centerville Village? And that would be true for any other village in town, any other area. What are the principles that were behind, factors that came behind coming up with that figure? And do you really believe that is fair to the town? Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman to my right.
Yes, my name is Bernard Kling. I'm from Osterville. Thank you, Mr. Els, and the rest of the town council for hosting this. It was, if I heard correctly, you did state that while the Commonwealth and many of the other agencies can kind of, your hands are tied, they do listen to what you have to say. So my question would be a topic that I haven't heard of, but in the last several weeks bears looking at, I think. And that is when you have an energy system put out at sea, does Commonwealth of Massachusetts or Avangrid take into consideration what is needed to defend that energy operation? In other words, you're going to have windmills out at sea that could be attacked by small-scale terrorist attacks. I don't know whether anybody has factored in what kind of military protection is going to be needed. That is common when you have a nuclear facility, oil facility. I know they're dirty words now, but I'm sorry, if you're going to put your power infrastructure out at sea, defense is critical, and we see that in the last couple weeks. So I would like you to ask the Commonwealth, and if the Commonwealth can ask the federal government, what their plans are to defend the energy infrastructure if it's put as windmills out at sea.
Thank you. Gentleman to my left.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Chuck Tuttle, a longtime Central resident. It's important to remember here that this is not an anti-wind power conversation. This is about thank you. This is about landing 2 billion with a B watts of energy under the town of Barnstable's recreational and residential areas. In my opinion, that's not appropriate. There are Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I told you it was going to be a great show tonight. It's important, now we're talking about estuaries and so forth, that people understand the ramifications here. Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant generated at its maximum capacity 690 million watts, 690 megawatts max. Right now, under Covell's Beach, we have cables carrying, or they're not yet energized, that are proposed to carry 800 million watts of power under Covell's Beach. That's more than Pilgrim ever produced under Covell's right now. And Mr. Green Dunes, those lines have not yet been energized. Yes, the pavement's been put back, and you can't see the box underground. And I hope nothing bad happens when they are energized, but if you go to YouTube and you check these things out, you'll see manhole covers flying in the air. Let's hope that doesn't happen at Covell's. Right now, the town of Barnstable has done its part. We have more energy running under or about to run under Covell's than was ever produced by the local nuclear power plant. So that's important to understand. Additionally, the potential financial benefit for sewering is about 1% of the total $1.4 billion cost, I understand. I might be wrong, but it's not a big nut. It's $200 million, which the net present value of those funds brings it down to about 1.3% of the $1.4 billion Barnstable sewering project. So let's keep that in perspective. And lastly, your utility bills will not decrease. As a matter of fact, Avangrid just paid a $69 million fine to cancel their contracts. Their power purchase agreements don't exist anymore. They paid the money to get out of the contracts because their cost to produce the energy went from something like 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour to like 24 cents a kilowatt hour. It's too expensive. Your utility bills will increase, not decrease. And lastly, so I can stay under 4 minutes, Avangrid has, in writing, in their own documents, said that these projects will not affect global warming. They are a tiny drop in a big, big ocean. Not to say that they're not going to bring benefit, but it's a giant price that we're being asked to pay for a tiny, tiny benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. Gentleman to my right.
It's a tough act to follow. My name is George Backrack. I live in Marston's Mills, and I've had my home there for 40 years, and my wife and my sons and I have been on Dowsers Beach virtually every day we can be, including during the winter. I also spent 10 years as the president of the Environmental League of Massachusetts. And during that time, we fought for the toughest environmental regulations in the country. And I'm proud of that. And we have fought transmission lines where we thought they were not in keeping with the environmental protection that we thought was appropriate. That's not the case here. Every study that has been made in terms of aquatic life, in terms of the plovers, in terms of the electromagnetic fields, suggest this will be environmentally safe and sound. And if you disagree with that, then all you have to do, frankly, is to look at Europe and China, where we are 20 years behind. And we have learned from what they have done well and learned from their mistakes. And you only have to look at Vineyard Wind and Covell's Beach to see a perfectly orchestrated and constructed onshore wind transmission line. As Mr. Ells has suggested, the town has one role to play. It can decide to enter a host community agreement or not. And the petitioner, the proponent, as Mr. Ells has said, can go to the Massachusetts Energy Facilities Siting Board with or without that agreement. With it, we actually get something. And for those that think $200 million is not a good deal, I'd like them to pay my taxes. So the choice is simple. Cut the best deal you can on all the issues that have been raised here, and for the best dollar amount you can get from this town, so we can use some of that money to fix our sewers, so our ponds and estuaries are safe, because that is truly the environmental consideration of our time. Or don't pass a host community agreement and let the proponent get approved by the Energy Facilities Siting Board, because I know them well, and they have the best interests of the Commonwealth in mind and the millions of homes that will get clean energy, and we will get nothing. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, to my left. You're up.
Hi. Hello, sorry. I'm Susie McClain, an artist. I live in Osterville, and we've owned a property in Osterville since 1980, my husband and I. I have a question from Margaret McGowan, and I'm sort of piggybacking on her question.
Could you speak right into the microphone? I don't think they can hear you. Thank you.
I'm not used to this. I'm not Daisy Jones, anyway. What plans, if any, have been made to continually monitor the impact and, indeed, the causeway at Dowses of the transmission cables, degradation both in the offshore trench and under the Centreville River, in perpetuity over the life of the contracts? That's her question. And so basically, my question to continue is, that the trenches under the Centerville River and indeed the causeway at Dowses are sort of the same thing, because we're worried about the disruption and the contamination of our salt aquifer for Cape Cod. And I quote from the lawyers of the town of Barnstable from a paper that they sent in to MIPA last year on November 28th, where they said that the Dowses Causeway is proposed as the only and highly exposed cable connection to the mainland. The proponent carries a very high burden to convince regulators that the culvert, the proposed concrete conduits atop the causeway, and the very causeway itself can successfully survive future storm events. It seems clear to the town that the very size of the conduits will add considerable expenses for sewer and other utility installation, maintenance, and replacement along the proposed routes, and the town should not bear these expenses during and after the project's useful life. And that ties in with her question. And so then, sorry, I just feel like the price we've been received for these projects is so little compared to what it's really going to cost. And if the town renegotiates it with Park City and Avangrid, shouldn't they be asking for more money for this whole thing? And at the end of the day, I'm wondering why we are even negotiating at all. In Europe, wind power cables come into more appropriate places, like military bases in Norway. And my husband and I watched a show recently about Virginia Beach and the wind farm coming in there under the Dominion people. And those cables are coming into a state military facility, not a town like Centerville and Osterville, with a historic town, you know, that's ancient buildings. And, you know, the aquifer that we worry about with the substations, you know, leaked chemicals, and we'll be seeing barges off our beaches for years to come as they repair cables that have broken down or something else that's gone wrong. Never mind the electrical fires. There just has to be a better way. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Janet Davis, and I live in Centerville, and I'm submitting this question on behalf of James Garland of Barnstable. And his question is, the electric transmission cables for these projects are generating over 2 times the amount of power that was produced by the Pilgrim nuclear plant. Who will be responsible for the environmental impact of an explosion or a catastrophic failure? And does the town have an emergency disaster plan in place with fire, police, and first responders? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir, you're up.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Joseph Conway. I live in Osterville. My question really to the town councilors, not to the town manager, who I thought we were talking with tonight, is that there are scientific studies proving that these 1,200 kilowatt cables produce temperatures up to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. These cables here are proposed to be placed over our most precious natural resource, namely our drinking water aquifer. The water temperatures will be increased, and the bacterial counts, the fungi will be concurrently increased as well. There is proof that the surrounding ground substrate and its chemical makeup will be changed, and possible additional contamination will be produced. As well, extremely high electronic magnetic fields will be produced. These cables will be sitting only a few feet beneath the beach surface, not 50 feet below that someone mentioned if they went down and watched them bring those cables in. These cables belong in an industrial zone, not which is the They do not belong in the most convenient landing spot for a Spanish company. Our beaches are the crown jewel of Massachusetts and the Cape Cod economic attraction. I would ask each counselor to show and raise their hand as to who would like to be responsible for these upcoming catastrophes.
Thank you, sir. You're up, gentlemen.
Good evening, Dr. Peter Bentavegna. I live in Osterville, Sepuit, raised my family here. Many of you here are my patients. I second the good Dr. Conway's comments. Again, refocusing a little bit, we were talking about environmental factors here, but also you can't talk about environmental factors without where is it coming through. And I do second the investigation of getting those cables coming up through the canal directly to that. I think that's reasonable. But thank you to Mr. Moderator, and to Mr. Ells, Town Council, and to Petition Chuck Tuttle. I'd like to read into the record the biological effects of electromagnetic fields. Now, there are studies on both sides. Studies that it does nothing, studies that it does a lot. Problem is, this is a long-term thing. There are no studies about what this is going to do to us 50 years from now. We have never put this type of cable anywhere the size that we're talking about. This is one of their first times this group, Avangard, has done something of this magnitude, and I congratulate them for doing it. However, I'm going to read into it. Biological effects of EMF, as per the literature, has been studied over the years. Most of these are still standing. Some have been debunked. Because remember, we talked about the wires that are in our backyard, and we were always worried about those. And a lot of that's been debunked. But in any event, things that are in the literature: genetic effects, cancer, cellular and molecular changes, behavioral changes, nervous system and brain issues, blood-brain barrier permeability, calcium efflux, cardiovascular issues, sleeping disorders, hormonal disturbances, immune system changes, metabolic effects, brittle diabetes, autoimmunity, fertility impairment, interpersonal effects, and impaired learning. I just wanted to read those into the record as the things that are in the literature that these fields can cause. I wouldn't put them underneath my beach. I don't want to sit on top of these things. We have other ways to get them into the grid.
So I'm just trying to keep track here. We're on topic 2. We've now done 20 minutes on topic 2. So we were going to try and split it between petitioners and town. We've given the petitioners more time because there's plenty of you that want to say something, and that's positive. So I think this is a good time to turn to the town to get some responses to these topic 2 questions and comments that have been made. See if the town can do that in 10 minutes. For those of you at a microphone, I'd suggest if you can stay there or sit close by, I'll come back to you in your order so you get a chance to speak under topic number 3. So let's go to the responses to the extent you're able to respond, town, this evening to the questions under topic 2. The first one, as I recall it, was a gentleman who was addressing it to both the council CIL and the town attorneys, I think, as they're called, as opposed to councilors here in Barnstable. It had to do with the Article 97 question and suggesting that this particular speaker didn't find any precedent for that Article 97 being resolved in favor of what needs to be done. And so anybody in a position to comment on the Article 97 question this evening?
Thank you.
Town Attorney Nordrum.
Karen Nover. I'm not aware of any instance where a town was overridden on Article 97 where the town opposed. But I will say there are ways that it can happen, and it certainly is possible. And I think in this environment, and given what these issues are, the state has environmental goals and targets which the governor is committed to meeting. And so I do think that while it's not typical, it is possible that the town's wishes could be overridden.
Okay, the next question, and thank you for that. Next question was the price tag, and how did we arrive, or how did the town arrive at a figure that was offered of $16 million as the cost of one of these projects. What were the factors that went into that number of 16 million, if that is a number that can be broken out?
Thank you, Mark Ells, Town Manager. If we go back to 2016, when the proponent, or an earlier version, the Vineyard Wind project, was primarily being looked to land in Yarmouth and with an alternative route through Covell's Beach. We entered into a dialogue with the proponent, and initially they were looking to land 1.6 megawatts of, 1,600 megawatts of power at Covell's Beach. And at the time, they were offering to the primary location $10 million in a host community agreement. They were also, I believe, under a power purchase agreement for about 7.8 cents a kilowatt. So they had identified limitations on what they could do relevant to that revenue cap that they had. We began looking at it, and I had gone through kind of the basics of the host community agreement in my initial presentation, my overview. Very concerned about something happening in the sound and interconnecting to the cable and bringing it in that we weren't anticipating. Another priority, equal priority, was water resource protection. So right now, or then, and even now, substations contain fluids. Those fluids can impact water resources dramatically. They exist right now, okay? They're even on poles in a small, they're not a substation, they're a transformer, but those contain fluids as well, you know. We had been arguing successfully to require a modernization, a better protection of our water resource. I'll get to the number. So we said, if we're going to do this, if this is going to proceed and we are going to try to get something from the proponent, we looked at what it would take to develop a new water supply. And start to finish, we were looking at about $32 million to do that at the time. That's the number that we began our discussions with. As the project progressed, by about 2018 or 19, the proponent came back to us and said, well, 1,600 megs is too much at that location. The most we could do is 8, safely, and to get it permitted. They split the project. So did the host community agreement. So the original proposal wasn't linked to their revenue generation. It wasn't linked to wastewater. It was linked to being able to develop a new public water supply if we needed to do that. I said earlier that the town council committed the first 16 million of the host community agreement to water supply. That's why. That was the public discussion. It was the discussion that was going on at that time. So that's where the 16 million came from. The other part of it, but it's not something we'd have to ask for in a host community agreement, is that they pay personal property tax. And this will lead to another question that I got about this 80 million. I don't know where the 80 million came from, but I can certainly try to recreate it. But basically, when we look at the host community agreement plus the personal property tax per year, which is estimated for the first project at about 800,000 to 1.2 million, that goes into the general fund as a tax. That's probably cumulatively where that $80 million come from. That's the other piece of revenue that we get, besides the road improvements, et cetera. So that's where the 16 million came from. Not related to sewers, not related to revenue generation.
Thank you, Mr. Ells. So next gentleman raised a question. Given the location of the proposed wind farms being out beyond the limitation of the town's municipal boundaries, which is 3 miles out, which is coterminous with the Commonwealth's 3 miles out, These are farther than that. So they're in federal waters. Was the town aware, or was the town raising the question that maybe these wind assets, which are energy assets, are they getting protection from the federal government or otherwise in the event of a terrorist event or something else? And is the town aware whether that's an issue that anybody is talking about, is really the gentleman was trying to bring it up?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'll certainly, it's outside of our authority, but not our ability to comment. So I will try to reach out to federal agencies or whoever's jurisdiction it falls if they didn't get an answer.
Thank you. Next comment, really a series of comments through Mr. Tuttle, but it seems to me the thing for the town's response there was, is there a plan, a backup plan, if in fact, when these systems are energized, given the amount of power that is going to run through them, and there is a problem, is the town ready to deal with that problem, whether it's an emergency or otherwise? Is that something that is being planned for?
It is being planned for. All of our emergency responders are involved. And as a result of the implementation of these, there will be an emergency response plan in place, as we do with all services that we may need to provide in our community. I think that's the answer to that question.
Mr. Bachrach made comments that he thought the environmental laws were rigorous enough in the Commonwealth so these would come out the right way when they went through the EFSB process. And then we got to a couple of questions raised by a woman, first on behalf of somebody else, and that was to do with, are there monitoring plans that will monitor what's going on with these systems such that we know when there is a problem that's underground? So it was kind of a general question about monitoring.
My understanding of what's in place relevant to any of the cable installation is that it was constantly monitored by, they refer to as a SCADA system, a computer system that identifies any deviation beyond what the regulatory and safety standards are for the cable. And then if it deviates, that notifies the owner, and the owner responds appropriately. If they don't, they're in violation of their permits on a project.
Okay, and then the comment that we've heard several times tonight was echoed again by this speaker, and that was that the landing spots for these cables are not the appropriate ones, that they're inappropriate. They should be in some other area.
I think I've already addressed that,
You
but
have.
what I would say to everybody is please, thank you for the comment, and we will always listen, but please communicate this at the federal and the state level, because we don't create that policy. When you refer to other countries and where they allow the landing, in every case you're referring typically to their national government. But no, given our structure, there's that hierarchy, federal, state, local. Please communicate equally to your federal and state, because that's where that policy will be established.
And then we had a comment again about the amount of power, again referencing the former nuclear power plant in Plymouth and the number of times in this person's view that the power was going to be out of these projects, and did we have an emergency plan if something happened? I think you've already talked about that in terms of what the fallback positions are. Then we had a couple of physicians' comments. Dr. Conway made comments regarding the temperature of the cables that were buried and what that might do with respect to the aquifer. And if the aquifer was heated up, what are the problems that might result from that, and who was looking into that? And so that's a general question as to whether the town has spoken to or is involved in that particular issue.
We are aware of heat, of EMF, electromagnetic, or EMR, and also a voltage. And everything we've seen in what the proponent has submitted to the regulating agencies, they meet their regulatory requirements and safety standards. If they don't get their permits. So with the case of heat, they have actually modified design to make sure that, as I understand what I've read and what's been approved again by the regulatory agencies, the heat emanates down from the utility, leading maybe to the question about the aquifer. There's no indication that it doesn't dissipate very quickly within the way it's been designed. So we don't anticipate an impact, but certainly, we're thinking of bringing in a third-party expert on all of three of these issues we have in the past, but non-related, but it is related. I mean, certainly after the comments in the certificate issued by the Secretary on Commonwealth Wind, we're going to be looking at any proposed changes in the load that they're proposing to bring into, any location. We've been doing that, but we wanted to, there's some things in there. If you have a chance to read what the certificate said, you'll probably see why I have concerns there. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the 10 minutes time allotted to the town. To the extent there are additional issues raised, as there were about EMFs, and the science regarding those that the town needs to continue to be aware of, and again, whether these locations are the appropriate ones. So with that, we're going to move quickly to topic number 3, siting of the project substations on top of and/or in the vicinity of water wellhead protection areas. And I'm going to go to the microphone on my left because this gentleman was next to speak. And hopefully that topic is one in which you can get your comments related to.
Well, I'd like to raise them up a little bit. I'm Tom Frederick from Osterville. I'm a retired businessman for an awful long time, resident here for 22 years. And in my business experience, I have involved in an awful lot of construction at plants in the computer industry. And that was abroad in Hong Kong and Japan and in Australia and Canada and France and Germany and England. And in all of those, our involvement to get approval for construction involved the people in the town and their interests. We asked for impact statements on the effect of all the constituency. That means residential, tourist-dependent community like we are, on the residents, the asset values of their homes. Somebody addressed the point of our merchants in town who are dependent on the tourist trade. I worry in my own mind about them. I can't help but think if I had my kids and I was 50 years younger, we used to go to Wellfleet. And if Wellfleet were pulling cables in town, and we went to Wellfleet for years to vacation, and if cables were coming into my town, I'd go somewhere else. And I would find another town to reside in. But I would like an impact statement if it's not published. I also went to look at what residential communities anywhere in the world have bring cables ashore for windmills. And somebody addressed that the rest of the world is ahead of us in the United States. I think we all care about the environment. I think we all want it done right. And I could not find anywhere, and somebody commented about Virginia Beach and elsewhere, the only cables I know that have come ashore have gone into non-residential environments. I can forget about the fact of our dependence on tourism here to strengthen the economy of the town. But I could not find anywhere, and that includes Denmark, which is probably the most developed country in the world in going to solar power and with their commitment on it. One last thought that I'd like to see reflected in an income, if we don't have that impact statement, is in all those environments, the town works town was never overridden by a state authority. And my golly, we are the United States of America.
Yeah.
As a student of history, from a legal point of view, from a history point of view, come on. If we don't have the right impact statement that says it's good for the town, then so be it. Let us do something about it, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman here to my right.
Hello, my name is Cliff Carroll. I'm from West Barnstable. First of all, thank you to the town. As much as I appreciate tonight, I think it's a shame that we're so far down. Up to now, the meetings have been stuffed in a little library on winter nights, and this has been kept pretty under the covers as far as Avangrid and their disclosures go. And I'm going to speak as quickly as possible. First of all, there were a couple different comments and a couple of old expressions come to mind. Chuck, you mentioned that Avangrid paid almost $70 million to break a contract. Well, they're offering us $16 million at this point. From what I understand, the second 8 doesn't even come to the end of the contract. But the expression that comes to me is, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. We've got another host agreement that I hope never makes it to the light of day. So please don't let it happen for a third time. Town Manager Alves, thank you again for your attention on it. You noted that the good old Cape Wind was put to sleep back in 2012. A big fight on that went on for almost 17 years, all in. One of those fights was a lawsuit which Attorney McLaughlin participated in, a local attorney, Charles Sabat, participated in. The Alliance to Protect Nantucket Sound brought the suit at the Energy Facility Siting Board. Despite the gentleman earlier's comments about take it or leave it, which was almost extortion, we won at the Energy Facility Siting Board. We defeated Cape Wind at the Energy Facility Siting Board in Boston, so it is doable. Looking around, everybody keeps bringing up, look at Europe, look at this, look at that. Well, if you do look at Europe, all their cables are failing. There are major problems. Ørsted is practically gone bankrupt. They're withdrawing from building wind farms in on the east coast of the United States. All of us, Palestine is in the news. Well, back in February, there was a Palestine, Ohio that was in the news. And that was the train cars that burned for about 3 days and subsequently polluted everything in the area. In addition to that, and I'm leading up to my question, and I'll get out of everybody's way. About a year ago, there was an Australian transformer that is probably 1/10 the size of what these guys are looking to build. That transformer caught on fire. It burned for 3 days. It was 60 firefighters at the scene. They couldn't put water on it. They couldn't go near it. So with that being said, there's an act, it's called the Clean Waters Act. And one of the biggest parts of the Clean Waters Act is the protection of public wells. So I lead to my question. How can the town of Barnstable, our Conservation Board, our Board of Health, our Water Department, various town council meetings, town council again, allow almost 20 acres of oil-filled transformer substations and land to be constructed over our designated well protection zone at the Knights Inn on Shoe Flying Hill Road, our aquifer protection zone, which is at the fire tower on the side of the Mid-Cape Highway, in our heavily well-dependent village of West Barnstable. Everybody, a lot of people here from the south side, people in West Barnstable, we're on wells, not town water. Both of those are up gradient, one from Wequacket Lake, and the other one is up gradient from all the well fields in the West Barnstable area. After being asked at multiple town conservation, Cape Cod Commission, and public hearings, and it was Cape Cod Commission, and public hearings, and conservation, the developers have still not disclose the number of gallons of toxic transformer oil, nor the amount of PFAS contained in the fire retardant systems. We're going to be told the systems are designed for an extra heavy rain, 110% of rain.
I'm going to have to ask you to start wrapping up.
I'll
You're
make
at the
it
4
real quick.
minutes.
Transformers don't drown in water. They explode. They catch on fire. Can our fire department put out an 800 million volt transformer fire? Can they do it in a way that doesn't put PFAS fire retardant into the critical well fields located directly below these transformers? Thank you again for all your time. Greatly appreciated.
Yes, ma'am, you're next.
Hello, Kathy Duran, local teacher from Barnstable and grandmother in Hyannis, longtime resident of Barnstable. Please consider our most precious resource, as I listen to all of this, our children. Please consider them. From many grandmothers, mothers, teachers, please consider the impact on the Centerville estuary where many of our grandchildren enjoy the benefits of that. We'd like to see that to go to future generations. I'm getting the education tonight of my life, and I cannot imagine putting 800 million volts of electricity into Covell's Beach. I cannot fathom it. So I'm just here to ask you on behalf of all the children, you know I think they are our most precious resource on top of everything. Please consider them as you move forward. As so many people have said, the research hasn't been done on the long-term effects. We don't know what it is for the next generations. Thank you, Dr. Conway, and other speakers tonight who have enlightened us that we don't know. And to put that much voltage that has never, as the person who spoke before me, anywhere in the world that hasn't come into a residential area, I'm just asking you, please consider that when you're making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, right here.
Good evening. My name is Fabia Meyer-Yazaki, and I live in Osterville. Unlike most folks here, I did not grow up on the Cape. I have not been living here for many years. My husband has spent his summers here throughout his childhood, but now we are a young family. We have young kids, and we've decided to make Cape Cod our home because it's safe, it's a healthy environment, and it's beautiful. Getting to my point, I don't see a lot of the parents that have been discussing this because they're home with their little kids, and luckily we got someone to take care of ours tonight. But I hear from the town manager that there is a disaster plan to address a situation should something go tragically wrong. And I hear that. I have worked for the United Nations for the past 2 decades. I'm all for sustainable development. It's the future, there's no plan B. But although there is a plan, I've also heard from the local fire chiefs that they don't have the capacity to address an electrical fire of this magnitude should it occur. Nor do they even have the answers of exactly they would have to address from the proponent. Another thing that really is disturbing to me, I have always been worried about the impact on the aquifer should an accident happen. And the risk from what I hear is lower than 5%, which is huge in my mind, if it's going to affect the only aquifer to all of Cape Cod. But okay, let's say that no disaster happens. It's very disturbing to me to hear about all these impacts, even if nothing goes wrong, so to speak. So do I understand correctly that Avangrid is a third-tier LLC? Therefore, it is not appropriately liable for disasters that may occur after the implementation of this project? And my second question, do I understand correctly that at the town level, we can still preserve Article 97, and therefore the proponent would have to find a different solution? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Gentleman here.
First, thank you for doing this. My name is Lawrence Brown. I'm a resident of Centerville. I've been a teacher for 42 years, 36 of those here on Cape. I'm also a columnist for the Cape Cod Times, and I came here to learn, and I've been learning a lot, much of which alarms me. I think the idea of routing cables through the Cape Cod Canal sounds very appealing for somebody who's still on the bottom end of the learning curve here. And certainly there's a lot to be concerned about. I'm old, and I'm looking around and I'm seeing a lot of gray heads and a few bald ones too. I'm not going to be here to see what happens if we, not just on Cape Cod, but as a people, fail to address the climate crisis. But our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will come storming into heaven, and they will demand of us, you said you loved us. How could you have let this happen? That you knew what was coming and did nothing. So all I can do as I continue to learn here is beg all of you to make sure that when we have satisfied as much as we can satisfy, that we figure out how to do this. Because if we fail to do it, and we seem to be in the lead in the country, and I'd rather see us as pioneers than guinea pigs. I like the feel of that a lot better. Because if we fail, then the rest of the country gets to take the model that you can, stop something like this with, with the death of 1,000 cuts, as the Chinese used to call it, the death of 1,000 cuts. I don't want to see alternative energy die in this country a death of 1,000 cuts. We have to figure this out. And that has to be our bottom line, that we will do this. We have to figure out how to do it safely and protect our towns. But the beaches that we love will be underwater if we don't.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, point of personal privilege just for a minute. Missing so far tonight, I haven't heard a thanks to our great staff over here, our town clerk and all her folks. I met the chief coming in tonight, and I want to say hello to our interim chief and thank her for her and her rank and file officers for taking the time away from their family to protect us tonight. Paul Phelan, I'm from Centerville, and just for a quick commercial break, I am a write-in candidate for Precinct 6. One thing that disturbs me, I can't forget incidentally to thank the Centerville Civic Association, Bob Schulte. Honest to God, folks, I was at the Centerville Library for a few meetings with Avangrid with 3 or 4 residents, and I just blew my mind that this was going on. And this is no slight at all to the town's leadership. I think it's a terrific town. We pay low taxes. And to the previous speaker from Marcia Mills, I was glad that someone's here tonight speaking for this project, and that we should pass the hat for them. If they can't pay their taxes, pony up a little more for clean water, shame on them. Because something's going to happen here. We need the aquifer is being polluted, and if we can't do it with the money from this project, we have to come up with the money elsewhere. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, over here. You're up.
Hello, my name is Nancy Hansen. I'm a resident of Osterville.
Can't hear you. You've got to speak right into that, ma'am.
How's that?
That's better. Thank you.
All right. Nancy Hansen, I'm a resident of Osterville. And my question is about the proposed substations. We've heard a lot of discussion about them, although to my knowledge, no concise information has been provided which the public should be aware of. As we know, not only is this affecting our beaches, businesses, and roadways, but also our neighborhoods. My questions are, where are the proposed locations exactly? What is the overall size, including height? Are they going to be lit up at night? And what is the projected wattage going in and out of each? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Gentleman here.
Tom Scanlon. I'm an abutter to the project from Osterville. I think what gets lost here is that how did we get here? Here we have a Spanish company creating a subsidiary designated as an LLC, which gives us very little recourse should things go sideways, and a lot of things can go sideways here. And I also learned today that the major investor in Iberdrola is the sovereign fund of Qatar, a repressive regime in the Middle East. So they are going to make money off of us to support organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah. Is that what you want? No. I say no. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take one more, and then we're going to go to the town's response so we can wrap up topic 3. Gentleman here.
My name is Thomas Bednark. I'm a lifelong resident of Cape Cod. I currently live in Centerville, and I'm adjacent to Wequacket Lake. And I wish you people would close your eyes and envision a giant spade cutting across Cape Cod from Sandy Neck over to Coles Beach. You would see, because of the geological formation made by the glaciers, a giant triangle which peaks out at the top of Route 6, right by Oak Street, Plum Street, and Shoot Flying Hill, where the proposed substations are going to be located. Now, you take a tank that may have 250,000 gallons of some substance to help in the cooling of the electrical lines and all the transformation that is required to produce electricity so it can be wired to other places. So this big triangle is like this. Here's a substation on the south side, and there's a substation on the north side of the peak. On the north side, it's basically stone and rock and some clay, but it's very porous, as we all know, but the rocks are a hindrance to construction. On the south side is mainly fine sands, and it requires little perk test to see the water just dissolve quickly into the aquifer. If you take millions of gallons or thousands of gallons and put it at the Craigville Motel area and somehow it ruptures, it's at about an elevation of about 60 feet above sea level. And quickly it would disperse down into Wequacket Lake, which is at about a 40-foot elevation, and it would transfer from Wequacket through a couple little streams down to Long Pond, and then it will go into the Centerville River. If you take the same scenario and put it in West Barnstable, all those contaminants are going to flow to the north towards the Great Marshes. And what do you have in the Great Marsh? You have a giant feeding area for fish, shellfish, and every other thing that we love to do on Cape Cod. It would be polluted in a matter of days or weeks, and everything therein would be unedible. And if you do the same thing with Wequacket Lake, and you start passing that down to the Centerville River, that will all be polluted and non-edible, and will eventually end up in Osterville, and all the cultural oyster beds, etc., will be gone. You'll no longer have fish, and there will be no longer recreation at beaches. So you have to think about what you're doing with these substations, because it is a big, big issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that concludes the public comment on topic 3. We'll go to the town for response on any of the questions that can be responded to at this point. Happy to review them again with, looks like Mr. Ells with his hand up. So the first gentleman was talking about long-time experience in the construction industry and the need for a broad-based impact report, not only environmental but economic, how it affects business, in addition to the environment. And was such a report being prepared in this case? That was his question.
In moving through the Mass Environmental Protection Act, that is part of the scoping that the state establishes in reviewing any project. So I will need to go back and take a look at to what extent that was required. They talk about financial ability, they talk about viability, they talk about, you know, many different factors there. So let me go back in. We did not commission an impact study to the extent that you've asked for.
Yeah, he was looking for tourism impacts and small business impacts in addition to environmental impacts.
So we did not do that, no.
Okay, the next question came from the gentleman from West Barnstable, and he was concerned about the environmental impacts. Made an analogy to Cape Wind, indicated that in his view there was some success there in litigation and overturning, or at least prevailing, not necessarily overturning, but prevailing at the EFSB level, and wonders why we can't do that again and prevail at the EFSB level with these particular projects.
Some of it I've addressed in my earlier statements, but there is nothing more important than the protection of our water resources on Cape Cod. In this case, we're looking at you know, zones of contribution to public water supply, and then more broadly, our water resources, because everything is interconnected. I think a latter speaker brought that up about how a potential spill may impact down gradient, you know, water bodies or receptors. My first answer about the maybe non-environmental impacts and this answer are the same. We're trying to look at what falls within our authority relevant to a project proceeding, and under the host agreement, we try to add things additional that will ultimately benefit the community if a project proceeds outside of our authority. Attorney McLaughlin and myself, and to a certain extent DPW, have spent a tremendous amount of time looking at how to protect water resources, given the fact that even though if this were something proposed before the town of Barnstable and our authority to approve, it would not be. The Energy Facility Siting Board has the authority to approve this. So we've tried to identify ways that we can minimize the risk and the impact. That was evident in the establishment of the host community agreement from day one. It's also evident in some of the groundbreaking work our legal department did, actually at the airport prior to this project, but also in getting requirements on the substations, both existing and the ones that exist right now, that are sitting on top of our aquifer, that aren't required by the regulators. They're required because your town stepped up to protect that resource. Now, I know that doesn't answer the question of then how do you stop it? Well, I don't know that we have the authority to stop it. So in the absence of that, we try to put in place, using third-party experts to assist us, what we can do. And in the case of the first two projects, at least, the proponent has agreed to it. We haven't done this for the third because we've ceased all of those discussions. ultimately it could be approved. Not by us, but the approval isn't being asked from us.
The next question, well, it was more of a comment than a question, I think. Young school teacher raised on the think of our children and what would happen to them in the future. She thought about the Centerville River estuary and the long-term effects of EMF and implored the town folks to think about those issues as you make decisions going forward. We had a comment/question, a gentleman from Osterville suggesting that there are two main issues. What's the effect on our water, the aquifer? What's our ability to fight a fire in one of these substations? And questioned whether we have the ability to do either. And then raised a question that came up with a couple of other speakers. Are we dealing with entities that are really shells, if you will, or owned by other entities that maybe are pursuing strategies around the world that we don't want to buy into? Not necessarily a question, more comments.
Yeah,
then there was another recommendation, and I'm not sure you need to respond to those, frankly, Mr. Ells, but then there was another recommendation, look at the Cape Cod Canal. Mr. Brown, we've heard that echoed several times tonight. If that's possible, please take a look at that, see whether the cables can go that way. Then there were, again, a series of questions, again, about fire and water. Pretty much what we heard previously and on the liability issue. And then the final speaker really spoke directly to topic 3, which was citing the project on top of or in the vicinity of wellhead protection areas. And his argument was when you have a couple of substations on either side of the top of the aquifer that runs down the middle of the Cape, a failure on either side is going to result in environmental disasters. And are we thinking about that as we go forward? Whether you choose to comment on that or not, I'm not sure it was a question. It was more of a comment about the location of the substations.
Youth are our priority, and the future is an equal priority for all of us. So yes, we take into consideration all of our actions. Certainly our legislative body does, and certainly we as administrative staff do. We're working directly with our emergency responders on development of appropriate plans. So I'll be more than happy to go back to that collective group and get a status as to where we are and how we intend to manage in the event of any disaster that occurs, specifically related to this and more broadly. I think that both speakers about the water resource characterized it well. The location along the Mid-Cape Highway is the top of the moraine. Everything that occurs there is critical. It's where the most water is, especially as you head west, the most clean water. As you head east, it varies depending on the land uses that are above it. And then certainly as you get a little further to the east, you begin to see like a different flow. It just doesn't go north or south, it goes north, east, and south. Our consideration, this has been a priority since the first day that we heard in 2016 that the proposed landing was to come through Yarmouth and then connect to the substation right outside of Independence Park. The immediate conversation was that something above what the regulators would require to protect in the event of a leak or a spill or any sort of situation that wasn't normal operations. And then within normal operations, the storage of material at those facilities was a priority consideration and has been. We've incorporated that into the host community agreement, but it doesn't remove it. It does not remove it. And again, it comes back to the issue of can we stop that if this project receives approval from federal and state agencies?
So we're now, I think that concludes the town response, particularly given the fact that it's 8:12, and I'll try and move things along here. We're on to topic 4. And let me just quickly read topic 4 and ask you to focus on that. Current status of PCW and CW projects financeability, including but not limited to power purchase agreements, for example, status of renegotiations and/or anticipated requests for proposals, and whether the town should require evidence of financeability and/or PPAs for both proposed projects to be in place before any additional work on taxpayer-funded property by the developer and/or permitting for the projects is authorized by the town or in any of its committees or commissions which require expenditure of taxpayer-funded resources. There's a lot in this topic, so it's fairly broad, so let's have questions on it. Start with this lady right here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Suzanne Conley, and I'm the chair of Safe Greater Dowses Beach. I'm sorry to disappoint all the people I told I was not going to speak this evening, but I want to make a point that I hope so many people are leaving, and I need to make this point before too much longer. The town does have power. It's been one of our major arguments. And our group actually asked for a study to be done by people who know how to do research, I'll just put it that way, about Article 97. It's a constitutional amendment. It's not a law, it's not a regulation. And the governor would have to violate the Constitution of Massachusetts to overturn any decision made by the town council by a 2/3 majority. Well, let me put it this way. It would take a 2/3 majority of our town council to put a home rule petition forward. Representative Diggs would probably carry it to the secretary. She would approve it. It would go to the legislature for rubber stamping. And what that does is give the town permission. It doesn't compel the town. It gives the town permission to grant easements under about a change of use for constitutionally protected public lands. I have learned about this amendment inside and out. That's all it does. Right now, we heard at the last town council, Mr. Els and President Levesque say we're not going to do any easements, we're not to grant any easements under Article 97 until the picture clears. As far as Dowses Beach goes, that project is in a very different position. There's no permit, well, they've begun permitting, but nothing's been granted. And I want to make sure that every person in Barnstable that cares about this knows that the town council does have the power to say no. And I just, thank you. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Joanne O'Connor. I'm reading a question on behalf of Margaret McGowan. Senate Leader Michael Rodriguez, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, called to ban Avangrid from future projects. Rodriguez said, when companies do not act in good faith, they should be stricken from future bids, plain and simple. Yeah. Is Avangrid a company the town council and town manager want to do business with? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry, I was enjoying that.
You've already spoken once tonight, right, sir?
I did.
Yeah. Has anyone not had a chance to speak tonight? I want to get to them first.
Okay.
And then I'll let you come back again, sir.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to get those who haven't had a chance. Is there anyone? We'll go to that microphone. And go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for allowing this meeting. I don't know how we got here because we should have had this meeting a long time ago. Our town is not for sale. We cannot be bought. And all I hear tonight is about money, money, money. Water, taxes, et cetera, et cetera. What about health? What about our future of our kids and our grandkids? I wanted you to know that I am a fish biologist by profession. I have a master's degree. No one has mentioned whales, baby whales that come up from the south with their mothers, and that they're actually nursing in these grounds. Nobody has mentioned the fishermen. I've worked with the Army Corps of Engineers for 6 years. I did a project that was dredging out a major port, and we did impact studies. What does that sound like? Have we done an impact study? No. We did impact studies for 6 years, and we found that any siltation from pounding and dredging and putting, pipes and whatever else in the substrate will cause siltation. I did a project of fish viability, and it killed all of the eggs of the fish and most of the larvae. So where does it leave our future fishing? I don't know. Another thing.
And ma'am, town clerk didn't get your name at the beginning.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shelley Sterling.
Thank you.
From Centerville.
Centerville.
Sorry. I've gone to all of the meetings that were online on Zoom with the Vanguard. Not one of them could answer a question. This is a new company. They've never done this before. They didn't have any idea of what could go wrong, and they had no, mitigations in place. And I'm happy that at least the council put them, I was really making them jump through hoops, and I'm glad. But wind power is not a viable future. It will never ever take over oil or natural gas, ever. Ever. It's not viable because they are running out of money. They are running out of materials which come from China. They are deforesting the rainforests of Brazil, trying to get the balsa for the windmills that go around. They have to be lightweight, and that's where they come from. So no more forests, which does a lot to our ecosystem. I don't believe in global warming, and I will tell you why. As a master's degree scientist, we studied, the tectonic plates and the evolution of the world and of the earth and all of this. This is what the earth does. It goes through transitions and transitions of, fires, major fires, earthquakes, volcanoes. That's what the earth does. It's been around for millions of years. It has always done that. It will always do that. So my grandson, thank you. My grandson asked me one day, if we stop using our gas stoves, if we stop driving cars, would it help climate change? And I said, absolutely not. And neither will wind farms, because they are not viable. I'm sorry, you can laugh at me if you want to, but go right ahead. We will wait to see the truth. And I certainly hope that you can pull the plug on this, because they are all smoke and mirrors. They can't answer questions. They don't have any mitigation for anything, and they shouldn't be allowed to do this project. There's just too much at stake in this town.
Thank you.
We're not getting the power from this windmill, from these windmills. This is going into Connecticut, it's going into New Bedford and Rhode Island. We are not getting a speck of this power. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, right here.
Yep. My name is Susan Starkey. I'm from Yarmouth, so not one of the villages here, but I was involved with the 2016.
So we're trying to limit the comments to residents of Barnstable. Great. That's what the meeting was for. So
yes.
It sounds like there's no objection, so I'll give you a couple of minutes.
Thank you all. Specifically to the PPA question here on topic number 4, because we worked with this in Yarmouth, we unfortunately didn't go forward with Vineyard Wind, and Barnstable was fortunate enough to create a very good host agreement with them. But what I have learned, I'm co-chairing a Faith Communities Environmental Network. It's 42 faith communities around the Cape, including one in Osterville, is that in order for a PPA, which would be after the host agreement, after it's being built, that
PPA
needs to,
being a power purchase agreement.
Yes.
Yes.
That is going to require some laws to change in order for Cape Cod and the islands to be able to get access to that energy, so it can really contribute to our 250,000 homes. So my question is, I'm wondering if the council has already started working with Representative Dylan Fernandez, because he is trying to get in place the language for a bill that would allow municipal aggregators to actually participate in a PPA, so that in the future we can have access to that. That's going to be a really important thing, and we can't just demand it. We actually have to change laws first. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll pass that on. Yes, sir.
Again, my name is Bernard Kling, and I am from the village of Osterville.
Have you spoken once, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, so anyone who hasn't spoken,
and I did defer.
Have you spoken before?
No, I have not.
All right. I'm just going to take people who haven't spoken before.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ellen Nozzle. I'm from Centerville. We are all here tonight for transparency, for clarity, and ultimately for answers. Many of us have unanswered questions that were posed to Avangrid. Mine dates back to a meeting in May. More than 5 months later, and after several attempts to follow up, I still have no answer because I don't matter. I don't write host community agreements. I don't give permission or write contracts to a company that claims to want to be our neighbor and then goes silent when faced with a simple question. I knew the answer to the question already. I wanted to know what they had to say about it. They either didn't know, didn't want me to know, or didn't care, all three being bad options. That power falls to the town government to do those things I mentioned. If you, like other citizens, have questions for Avangrid hanging in a speech bubble over your head, you must demand answers. Tonight, we have heard all about what we have to stand to lose by continuing to industrialize our town. But what do we stand to gain? Avangrid's paid radio commercials say that they will give Barnstable the status of leading the way in clean energy. They present themselves almost like a public utility that is doing us a favor, instead of standing to gain many millions of dollars. And they claim to be giving hundreds of millions of dollars to the town. Whether you like it or not, citizens perceive that the money is tied to Barnstable's sewering project, a trench in the road filled with pipes and cables that will make everybody happy. But if that were the case, we wouldn't be here tonight. Over half of the $200 million they claim to provide will be available only if they got approval of the Commonwealth Wind project proposed to land at Dowses Beach. Even with that full promised amount over the life of the 25 to 30-year agreement, Avangrid will be underwriting a fraction of 1% of the $1 billion cost of sewering the town. It seems to be an example of a bad investment, even if one could place a value on our irreplaceable ecology. My questions tonight are just exactly how much money does the town stand to gain from Avangrid's present and proposed offshore wind projects over the life of the host agreement? Where and how will these dollars be used? And how do you plan to hold a company that is without power purchase agreements, again, accountable for making good on their end? And where do individual councilors, 2 weeks from election day, stand on continuing to pursue the proponents' projects?
Thank you. You haven't spoken before, have you, sir?
I have not.
Microphone's yours.
I'm Bob Abrams. My wife and I have owned a home in Osterville for over 30 years. I've sat here and I've heard incredibly serious, in fact, overwhelming issues of concern. I heard the lady over there, first one to speak in this session, say to the town council, "You have power." I kept hearing from the town, well, we could negotiate, but we don't really have very much say in this matter. I agree with the woman on my left. You have power. And I would like to hear what legislative efforts you, as a town council, have considered, what lobbying efforts you have considered, what litigation efforts you have considered, and what other kind of efforts you have considered to stop and change what I hear is the central issue here. The central issue I keep coming back to is the location of the lines and the stations. That's what I want to hear about in terms of litigation, lobbying, and legislation, and any other approach that the town council has considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abrams. Okay, so I've got two people at the microphones, both who have spoken before. Anyone else who hasn't spoken who would like to speak? I don't see so I'm going to recognize you first from West Barnstable.
Thank you very much. It's two parts. It's first of all, follow up. I'd like to make sure the town council knows. I was talking about old sayings. One of them used to be, "You can't fight town hall." Well, I feel the town hall is with us from this point forward.
Could we get your name again, the town clerk?
Cliff Carroll, West Barnstable.
Sorry, thank you.
They used to say you can't fight town hall. I feel that after tonight, you're with us, going forward, you're starting to realize the seriousness of this, the implications, and we're all with you. So we'd like to help you kill that third host agreement. I also hope that we're saving and reserving a table at the EFSB hearings coming up as a participant so that we can have issues. I was also told, and again, Chuck brought this up, this is the first time these cables have ever come on land at this voltage. When we were fighting Cape Wind, there were no federal regulations 3 miles off Craigville Beach. Well, one of the main things that we found was they were trying to put an oil-filled transformer substation 4 miles off Craigville Beach. That had about 20,000 gallons of dielectric transformer oil. Well, after researching it, the Minerals and Management, which used to govern federal projects, they have a rule on any container with more than 2,500 gallons of oil on an offshore system, and again, I think our aquifer is an underground ocean, was required to do what was called a spill fatality chart. And Cape Wind fought it and fought it and fought it. And we finally got it done, and it had to show where that oil was going to go in the 4 seasons of the year. And it turned out it was going to hit every shoreline inside Nantucket Sound, depending on what time of the year it was. Our water departments, they know what direction the waters go. They know what down gradient is. They know where this oil is going to go in the event of a catastrophic fire. We need to do that mapping, whether EFSB likes it or not, and we need to submit it as part of the MEPA, and we need to get it into EFSB because it will show how many homes are going to be polluted, how much water is going to get shut off, in addition to the future well that the towns talk about behind the West Barnstable Fire Department. This is going to jeopardize that. In reference to the financial end of it, and again, I'll try to make this very quickly, but I just did a quick title search. And this is on an option which was purchased or just went to record on a piece of property in Marston's Mills. In the entity that is notice of an option agreement, this is on record at the Registry of Deeds. The entity is Park City Wind, LLC, a Delaware limited liability company having an address care of Avangrid Renewables in Portland, Oregon. They're already 2 corporations deep, and this is just on an option agreement. As far as the financial liability, how much are they putting up to pay for our water in West Barnstable in the event of a spill? I appreciate the town, and again, I don't want you to mistake it. We're with you, and we know you're with us, and hopefully with us going forward. And I hope all together we can at least stop the 3rd project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Again, I thank you for indulging me. My name is Bernard Kling, a resident of Osterville. I think at the beginning, Town Manager Els, you spoke about the $60 billion or whatever $billion-dollar fine that Avangrid is paying to back out of these PPAs, right? There's a large fine, it is my understanding? 48 million, okay. I find it strains credulity that a company that cannot meet a power purchase agreement can come up with $48 million on a dime. And that makes me wonder what the bidding process is in this Commonwealth with regard to these projects. And my question is, would you be willing, as the town council, to at least put kind of a sense of the town council motion forward to the Auditor General, to, I believe we have a, what are they called? The Inspector General, to look into how the bidding processes work. Because I find it, once again, very odd that a company that is fined $48 million then gets to go ahead and bid, and in the meanwhile is painting your streets with yellow lines on Sunday afternoons. And we've all seen this going on. Anyone who lives in these villages have seen this going on. Quite intimidating, by the way. I know of no company that would put this kind of effort forth without having an assurance that their bid is in fact not a bid at all. It is an absolute ironclad agreement. So I would like to ask you to ask the Commonwealth, those people in the Commonwealth that look into these kind of things, Inspector General, Auditor General, whatever it would be, with independence, to look into the bidding process, specifically as it regards to these projects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I've got one more. I'm going to recognize Mr. Moran, who's at the microphone, who hasn't spoken before, and then we're getting to the town's comments on topic 4.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Larry Moran. I live in Cotuit, been on the Cape for 23 years, and I've lived all over the country. That doesn't mean anything today, but what it does mean is that we're here on a situation where this town, like it or not, has been the guinea pig of the project. By that I mean other places have been approached, Yarmouth one of them. Perhaps there are other areas on the East Coast that were being approached, and I think that Mark made some reference to the Carolinas. I'm not aware of what's going on south of New York, but I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you got to speak right into it, Larry.
Okay. All right. So my concern is deals with the jurisdictional issues, the inclination of both conservation to claim jurisdiction doesn't allow them to do things. The town council seems to do that in some instances, but thank God for Suzanne. She's the one that reminds us that we're dealing with an open ability. It appears too that the host community agreement may have had some deficiencies. I don't say that it was intentional or negligent. It was just situations that maybe all the issues weren't covered, because now they're being raised, and that's what we're having to deal with. But the two other matters before I get to one comment and a question I'm going to ask. First of all, it's great that Zoom hasn't been imposed upon us tonight. We never would have had this attendance had it not been for a public hearing. And I also want to compliment Bob Schulte and the petition group for the efforts that they put in. It's a lot of effort to get the town council to work with, to communicate and to get this hearing. There need to be more of them and not fewer of them. There's one other concept in both conservation regulations and it may or may not be in town regulations, but it's the concept of cumulative effects. Cumulative effects are very logical in this project. That means that when you bring the cables ashore and you do the work you're going to do on the beach, where are these cables going? They're going up the river, up the streets and up the rivers. They're going to substations. What is the effect along the way? There's effects that were never considered by conservation, and I don't know whether the town council has considered them either. But the consequences are no less significant away from the shore as they are at the shore. So my question is, with all that you've got today, are you going to go back and really seriously consider what is being presented to you tonight? And are you going to communicate that information back to the community so we know you've heard us? That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. So we've completed the public participation in topic number 4, and so we'll go to the town for any responses they'd like to make. Many of the issues have been already covered, and comments were made again. I know it started out with the speaker imploring the town to take a serious look at Article 97. her view being that we clearly have some, or the town clearly has some rights in that area.
Thank you. So Ms. Conley is correct that Article 97 gives permission to use protected property in a certain way, and in this case, it's property at the beach. It would allow the granting of an easement. And for Park City Wind, the Article 97 legislation has been enacted, and the town council has authorized the granting of the easement. The town council has directed the town manager to put the granting of that easement on hold until the EFSB issues its decision, and we can review that decision and then make any recommendations as to how we think we ought to proceed. I think the thing to keep in mind is there's Article 97, which, while again, it would be highly unusual, there is a way that the state can override the town. The second piece of that, because that's just the permission to grant an easement, is whether the town can be overridden on the actual granting of the easement. That's a little more complicated, and I think honestly that's a gray area, and that's something we're talking about internally at the town. But they're two separate things. One is Article 97 that gives permission, and then it is permission for the granting of an easement, which is a separate matter.
Okay, that's the Article 97 town response. There were some other comments. One new comment we heard, has there been any impact studies done on fisheries, including whales, that the town has been involved in?
Not directly by the town, no.
Okay. And so there were additional comments, again, about water, about fire, and then there were a number of comments about power purchase agreements. And this topic did deal with the finances on them. And there was a question that if you took the beginning of the host community agreement that apparently has been executed by the town from the beginning, played it all the way out to the end, what would the town actually get out of that in terms of revenues, potentially, and where would those revenues be spent? That was a question as well that was raised by one individual. I don't know if there's anything more that can be said on that at this point.
I guess I'll maybe work backwards. There was a question about legislation and municipal aggregators as well, and to my knowledge, there hasn't been any proposed modifications to state legislation relevant to allowing for that. How much? The estimated personal property tax for the first project, the Vineyard Wind, is estimated between $800,000 and $1.2 million a year once the project is complete and fully assessed. I mean, we're 3 years into this, I think, 2 years into this. Remember, assessments are 2 years before the current year you're in. So that we ultimately expect that once completed, 2 years after that, it'll be fully assessed and be in that range. The other part is the host community agreement that I described, which was, for the first project, $16 million. That first host community agreement, the town council has control over revenues. So we don't predetermine, staff certainly doesn't control how those monies would be spent. So unless otherwise designated by statute or other authority, comes in as a general fund, general revenue. And from there, the town council designates how it will be spent. And in the case of the first project, it was put toward water supply. In future ones, I can't answer that. That would be something for our town council to consider as projects progressed. So I hope that answers. Did I miss a portion of that?
Yep, thank you, Town Manager Ells. Then we had a couple of speakers who, again, implored the town to go forward and actually exercise authority that many of the speakers here have expressed this evening they believe you have. Mr. Abrams from Osterville encouraged you to think about litigation, think about lobbying efforts, think about what other efforts the council could take, legislative or otherwise, to assist in that regard. Same comments from the gentleman from West Barnstable. Again, protection of the aquifer, again, referring to some of the things that were done in the Cape Wind litigation and how they might have application here in terms of litigation, and again, imploring the council to explore those and look at those. So there was also a gentleman who raised the question about the bidding process and whether the bidding process here, in light of what has been suggested, are players that have been penalized for things, how these people continue to get contracts. Is there a need to have the Inspector General perhaps take a look at that to see whether all the bidding laws that are applicable have really been complied with? And then there was also the question, and you don't necessarily have to respond to that. If you'd like to, Mr. Ells, you can, but I'm not sure there's a response. Do you want to respond to that one?
Well, relevant to the bidding, I think when the proponent came into us for these 3 projects, they had their power purchase agreements in place. It was one of the reasons why. They had the federal grant in place, they had the power purchase agreement in place, they had proceeded with their permitting. They didn't come and ask us if they could proceed. They have the right to do that. Same as they have the right to do and create whatever business entity that's legal in the United States to create. We don't control that. As soon as we heard that there was a default on the power purchase agreement, we began to look into it. I turned it over to our legal department. I discussed it with our staff. I personally reached out to the Attorney General in both Massachusetts and Connecticut. Connecticut got back to me that day. They said that they had not defaulted. They said that there was a provision within the contract, the PPA, that they could renegotiate. It confirmed what the proponent had said. I didn't have direct conversations with Massachusetts. I did reach out. Ultimately, our legal department did. Ultimately, they defaulted on that PPA. When they did that, we immediately ceased all discussions outside of those things that we needed to proceed with, which was review of the permits that they had filed, and they have every right to do so. In the case of the Park City is the Connecticut. In that case, and I'll get to the answer about the Inspector General. In the case of the Connecticut, ultimately, the proponent told us that they weren't going to be successful in their negotiations. That news went out almost immediately. People were saying, do you know this? Well, we do now. And therefore, I haven't seen a formal termination of that PPA from Connecticut, but we believe that that's the way it'll proceed. Go over to procurement. We've been told by the proponent that they're considering submitting for future solicitations to put in bids to each or any state relevant to the purchase of power. And we certainly will look at, and I was questioned early on about whether we should be making comments that aren't procurement related within that document. We do have the opportunity to comment. About their financial viability. I personally asked questions and did not receive specific answers relevant to, if you're in default of a contract in a state, first, can you proceed with permitting? I was answered there and they said yes. The state official said yes. Secondly, can they participate in future bids? I have not received an answer to that yet. So know that we are actively looking at every single issue as it materializes. And I don't really have much more to say than that. As we know information that we can share, we will. As I said in my opening statement, some of it we can't share. So, but I will do my best to communicate everything I can with you, and I'm the person you should call. If you can't find an answer, if you don't get an answer from the proponent, please call me and tell me what your question was. And I know we have it written now, and I'll do my best to get it, okay? I'll do my best to help. Can't answer everything.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Ells. The final comment was from Mr. Moran, and he cautioned the town that cumulative effects are a key element in considering whether or not to issue environmental permits, and was doubtful, in his view anyway, that cumulative effects had been looked at in all of these situations, and urged the town to take a look at that going forward, and urged the town to make a commitment to follow through on some of the things that were heard this evening. So with that, let's go to topic 5. That's our last topic of the evening. I'll try and move it right along to try and get us back on schedule. Again, I'm looking for folks in the first instance who have not spoken tonight to speak first. Topic 5, process related to negotiations for a host community agreement and potential Article 97 vote for the proposed CW project and their implication on the community. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Patricia Conway. I live in Osterville, and I'm a nurse, and I've lived here for 45 years. The one comment I want to say is we talked about this agreement, this host agreement you made with Cobo, and the talk that you did about the Craigville Beach area. I want to point out and make it perfectly clear to you that that was all done during COVID, under your Zoom meetings, and no one ever knew a thing about it. All right, so that's what I'm really pissed off about, because you've kept everything quiet, and anyone in town didn't know anything about it till it was all over. And you already voted about the 97, the section 97, and released it. There wasn't any talk about that. Where was that disclosed to us? Where did I give you my informed consent to do such a drastic thing to our community? So I am upset. I'm upset because we did come here to talk to the counselors, and we haven't heard one word from them. All right, all we've heard from you is from your discussions. Well, that's great. Now talk about this host community here. I want to know why. We all know that it's very important to get our sewers. Everyone knows that. But this has been going on for 45 years. I put sewers in my office building right down by the hospital, and I built it. So I know all about the sewers. And I paid for it. But you've neglected all these years with all your planning boards, not requiring any of these developers to protect our water, all right? And you let it's not just a local issue, it's not a state issue, it's a federal issue that you allowed the pollution that goes on at Otis Air Force, and now you want to accept this crap. So the point is, I want to know why. I talked to Ben Thompson, Senator Markey's aide, and he told me there's money in the infrastructure bill for the sewering of the whole Cape. And I want to know why you haven't secured that money, and I want a more open discussion about that, because we don't need Avangrid to try to buy us.
Okay, this woman right here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ann Schulte of Centerville. I would be remiss if I didn't start off by thanking very much the, I'll say, fabulous 4 of Centerville who worked tirelessly to put together the petition, and the 500+ people that signed on almost immediately. Without all of you, this would not be happening, so thank you. My question, without my reading glasses, given all the risks and the impact on our community, many residents are dismayed by the financial deals the town negotiated in the Vineyard Wind and Park City Wind host community agreements. Can you please tell us what, if any, detailed analysis was done of the financial terms at the time of the negotiations, and who on the town staff performed it? Additionally, if Avangrid is able to renegotiate their bid, will the town of Barnstable be able to renegotiate our host community agreement for Park City Win. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Sean Fitzgerald, Centerville. In 2019, the town of Barnstable put out a bid for wind turbines to be installed at the wastewater treatment facility on Bearses Way. I believe the bid included a 5% bond of the total contract and was held by the town. Does Barnstable have a bond with Park City Wind? And if not, why not? Also, I just want to echo what a lot of other people have said here tonight. I hear a lot about what we can't do, the state, the Fed. Please focus on what we can do, because it's very important, as you heard from hundreds of people here tonight, whether it's standing here or not standing here or just in presence alone. It's very important. Please focus on what you can do, and please make this project very viable and for the best outcome for all of us here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Janet Smith. I'm from Osterville. Mike, good to see you. I'm going to follow up on Ann and a couple of other comments. And with all due respect, I believe that all the people up here on this podium here, you all work for the town of Osterville and you're paid by the town of Osterville. I think I'm correct in that.
They're actually paid by the town of Barnstable.
I'm sorry, Barnstable, exactly. And
Barnstable's a part of Barnstable.
You're absolutely right, Mike. But here's the thing. You guys work for the town of Barnstable. This is the town of Barnstable right here. And as a resident for many years, I'm very stressed over the fact that we had to go get a petition to get you people to sit up here and talk to us. I went to a couple of the meetings at the Osterville Library. I went to the Avangrid meetings. It's an absolute disgrace with questions that not one could be answered. And I agree with the people saying their follow-up questions weren't answered. But here's what I want to talk to the town about. You guys work for the people of the town of Barnstable, and I think that we shouldn't have to go get petitions to get you to come sit here and listen to us, first of all. The second thing is I'm very concerned about something that happened for me personally with trying to find out what's going on in Osterville. I live off of Weano Ave. I walk my dog there practically every day. I called the highway department because I wanted to inquire about the green markings and all of the surveyor work that was going on that street. I got a nice woman, I know her, I'm not going to use her name because it's not her fault. And she said to me, we have nothing to do with that. I said, you're the highway department, how can you have nothing to do with that? People are marking up the roads to dig. This is not the tree people, the whatever. So she went off and talked to one of the engineers, and they said to her, oh, that's Commonwealth Wind. Okay, well, Commonwealth Wind has not been approved. I think if something can be done for the sewers in Osterville, because we're 10 years out, 20 years out, whatever, that's great, but Commonwealth Wind has not been approved. How can there be markings going on Weano Ave to dig up for Commonwealth Wind for the sewer? And also, if Commonwealth Wind has stopped, who's paying for that? Because we're not slated, Osterville, in the sewer project to happen until more than a decade out. So I feel like we've jumped the gun there. But the real concern was the reaction of your team in the highway department, and it's not their fault. They immediately went, we're not involved in that, it's Commonwealth Wind. Somebody authorized those people to mark Weano Ave with all the green markings for the sewer. So I would like to understand who's paying for that stuff, why anything related to the sewer is going on before Commonwealth Wind was approved. And by the way, the Commonwealth Wind project from the meetings I went to at the library said it's either going up through the middle of town, up Weano Ave through the middle of town, and if it goes that way, then it will be piggybacked on the sewer. If it goes East Bay Road and up, I guess it's Old Mill, the sewer won't be involved. So why do I have markings around the corner from my house to dig up for the sewer project? That's my question, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet. Yes, ma'am. You're next. I'm sorry?
I've already spoken once, so please let him
that's
go
very
ahead.
kind of you to tell me that. Gentlemen, you haven't spoken. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Goonan from Osterville. My comments, everybody's talking about Avangrid. Avangrid is not the controlling interest. It goes back to Spain, to Iberdrola. And Iberdrola, any of the contracts, the reality is they're all going back there and they're controlling the situation and they control the purse strings. Just like Iberdrola back in May of 2022, they dropped 32,000 customers in the Republic of Ireland that they were their electric customers because the business model changed and Iberdrola, headquarters in Spain, says drop and walk away from it. What is the town going to do going forward to make sure that the paper entity of Avangrid is not the only one at the table? You need to have Iberdrola at the table. That's the reality, or else the town is going to get soaked. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Since it is late, I'd ask people to try and keep your comments to topic 5, which again deals with negotiations for a host community agreement and the potential Article 97 vote for CW, Commonwealth Wind. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Joanne O'Connor from Centerville. I'm speaking on behalf of 2 business owners in Centerville. One is Tony Ninivagi from the Barnacle. As the owner of the Barnacle, a seasonal takeout restaurant across from the Craigville Beach, I can tell you that last year's opening, 2022, was a disaster. Our annual opening date has always been mid-May, and that year we could not open until the first week of June due to Craigville Beach Road closure and construction. Even then, the road was closed on occasion and had limited one-lane travel with no police supervision. I was assured by Vineyard Wind that the road would remain open. Dana, a Vineyard Wind representative, and I met several times to review the situation, but no relief occurred. This delayed opening and subsequent road access issue caused grave loss of revenue. My questions are these. What assurance does the Barnacle have that this won't happen again? If this does occur and causes a loss of revenue, what recourse under the host community agreement does the Barnacle have to recover such losses? And the second question comes from John Mahoney, the owner of Craigville Pizza and Mexican. During and after the Vineyard Wind Colville's Beach project, Avangrid did not help offset lost business and disruption costs for Craigville Pizza and Mexican, despite my complaints. Avangrid visited this past summer well after the fact. Still no check or mitigation. How can we trust this developer who is dangling business mitigation for Centerville and Osterville businesses when they will not take care of this small business and will not put anything in writing after months of requests from Centerville and Osterville businesses that would be significantly impacted by Park City Wind and Commonwealth Wind? And on behalf of myself, a business owner in Centerville, I would like you to know that since the cancellation of the PPA agreements, since they defaulted on that, we agreed, Avangrid and I agreed, that there is no sense in us talking. So I think that speaks volumes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Now, you've spoken before.
Yes.
All right, so you're going to make a comment relevant to topic 5.
So what I don't understand, just procedural, like, why don't we get a vote? Why? Like, so this will be the last meeting. We won't see you guys again, and we'll be put back in that gray zone that we were in. Like, why
Ma'am,
are we
we're
not?
on topic 5.
Why are we? But why are we not voting on topic 5? Why are we not voting on anything?
This is not a meeting to vote. This is for.
I know, but we have never been brought into any. We know this is like a toxic energy system. It's inefficient. It poisons our whales and our sea life. But we have no vote, and we have no, like everyone has mentioned, we have no communication with something that's affecting us directly. So is like will that change? Like he asked, is that going to change? Or like I don't even want to live here anymore. I feel like I'm not even in a democracy. You know, like do we like Mark? I know you said we can contact you, but like she said, like you don't get questions answered. There's geosearch trucks in our neighborhood, in my neighborhood too. And they laugh and they say, I say, who are you working for? And they laugh and they're marking everything too. So apparently big wind is coming down my neighborhood. But I don't even know that. Like, why is it so secretive? And like, are you guys under pressure? Like, Mark, I know you said we have some control over this, some power, but we don't have other power. I don't understand that. Like, is the state tying your hands? Is the federal government tying your hands? Like, what is going on? Like, why is it like this? Why is it happening like this procedurally?
Okay.
So my question
All right,
is,
so your question is,
can
why
you
is it happening procedurally?
Can you please just let us know, like, when we have a vote and when you're going to fight for us?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Catherine Bean. I did speak before, but as
I
this
think
meet-
have you spoken before, ma'am?
No, I haven't.
I'm going to let her go first.
Sure.
Go ahead.
My comment's not related to issue number 5. It's just an observation. If you'd like me to hold off, I'm happy to.
Well, I'm trying to get comments on number 5 so that we can complete the topics that were under petition. But is there anyone else, before I let this woman get on to something else, that wants to speak directly to topic 5? You do.
Yes, as related.
I'll come back to you if we have time. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Catherine Bean. I live in Osterville, and I did speak once before. I'm sorry that we lost a lot of people. This is a long meeting. My question, though, we have an election coming up in 2 weeks. Someone mentioned it previously. I ask everyone that's in this room and everyone that might be watching this on television, speak to the town councilors that are running in your precincts. We can make a difference by how we vote, all right? We have been told in Precinct 5 that the vote would be against the support of Article 97. That's the only thing that we have, I feel, as residents, is to fight for Article 97 so this doesn't go through. Take it back. Let's step back and have a planned approach and tell them where we feel a wind project might fit better in Barnstable, okay? And for people that ask questions about the transmission state or the substations, they purchased land, Avangrid has purchased land, quite a few acres, over on Oak Street, just as you come into Cape Cod. They want to put that substation there, the size of 3 football fields that will be lit up 24/7. People on Oak Street don't know. People on the north side don't know how this project is going to impact them, in my opinion. But everyone vote, please vote, and get to know what your town councilor's opinion is on all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this woman has a final comment on this last topic 5, not really on it, but she wants to make an observation. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, I just figured this was the last opportunity to speak, so I stood up. My comment is that climate change is here. Unfortunately, I think it's here to stay. Global warming is here to stay unless we make a radical and concerted and universal effort to reverse it. It's a catastrophe. It's a juggernaut out of control. It's a speeding freight train out of control. And we all have to make every effort, large and small, to stop the reasons, the causes of it. And so therefore, when I came to this meeting tonight, I was very discouraged to see on the table up front all those plastic bottles. Plastic is a huge contributor to global warming and climate change. And so I encourage the town and I encourage everybody here not to buy plastic bottles and not to provide them to your panelists when you organize a meeting. You could have had glass pitchers and glasses. You could have had glass pitchers and paper cups. Because global warming is a catastrophe waiting to happen here. It's on the horizon, and sadly, it is a catastrophe already in many parts of the world and for many people. It may seem like a drop in the bucket, but there are meetings like this being held all across the country right now as we speak, and there are probably plastic water bottles just like that on the podiums for all the guests and for everybody else, and you'll find, I ask you next time to have a glass pitcher and glasses, you'll find that if you start saying no to plastic, it will become second nature, and it will become second nature, and it will guide you in many other decisions where you say no to plastic in your purchases at the supermarket. You automatically will go for the paper the wood, the cardboard, the metal, and you'll say no to plastic. And remember, two other quick things. If we don't buy it, they will not make it. Plastic is a big factor in global warming. Someone spoke tonight about a very good phrase, death by 1,000 cuts. This is exactly what we're talking about. It may just be 8 plastic water bottles up here, but as I said, there are meetings like this every night all across the country. That multiplies very quickly. Death by 1,000 cuts is why we're facing the global catastrophe that we are. So please, next time, don't buy the plastic bottles.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, any town response to the public comments on topic 5? Again, there were Article 97 was raised a number of times.
I don't know that I have anything else to say about Article 97. Certainly within the host community agreement and the concerns about business and impact of, you know, it isn't limited to this particular utility company, whether they're approved or not proceeding. We've got a better part of 27 more years of significant construction throughout our community because we've deferred the issue of installing sewers in already developed roads and neighborhoods. So again, I can't speak to, but I can certainly reach out on your behalf to whoever the proponent is. And if it's not a cable, if it's not a utility project, then it's us most of the time, unless it's on one of the state routes. So you come to me, and whatever your concern is, please come and talk with me, and I'll do my best to address what you're asking.
So a phone call about the green lines on Weano Ave should be
those
made to you.
aren't sewer. We're not designing sewer in Osterville.
All right.
So I'm going to have somebody from DPW go down and take a look at what you're
All right.
talking about.
So
On the flip side, I get a lot of questions about why are you allowing a utility, this proponent, but we have lots of utilities in town. National Grid's another one. When somebody is preparing to do a design or an environmental investigation, they go out in the field and they mark up the roads, they mark out utilities, they do borings along the roadway to better understand the conditions that exist. We allow that. We allow that across the board. That's not the project. It doesn't need to be a permitted project. They incur the cost of doing that. When we would get involved is if there's a public safety concern relevant to how they're doing it, or if for some reason DPW is concerned about some other factor. But typically, they know of it, we have known of it, when all 3 of these projects have proceeded in their early stages, and we have not prevented it, and we would not prevent that. It's preliminary investigation.
thank you, Mark. So we're now completed with the 5 topics: public participation, town response. So we've got a couple of wrap-up items. First, I'll go, is Mr. Tuttle still here? Okay, Chuck, so we've got you down as final remarks, and we're well over time now, so we'll give you a minute. You can use one of the microphones in the aisle.
Hello, hello. Thanks. Hi, my name's Chuck Tuttle, Centerville resident, and I'm one of the 4 residents that initiated the petition that got us here tonight. Along with Joanne O'Connor, Bob Schulte, and Sandy Jones Fitzgerald. These crazy kids are real workers. This meeting is really all about you. Thank you for being here. More of that in a minute. But first, I need to thank Town Councilor Matt Levesque, Town Attorneys Karen Nobler, Charlie McLaughlin, Town Manager Mark Els. Thank you for, and Lynn Poyon and her team. Thank you for helping us with this format and getting this to happen. The town did not initiate this meeting. You initiated this meeting. The 500 people that signed the petition that got us here initiated this meeting. The town was asked to accommodate us, which they did, and we greatly appreciate that. Power to the people. The town, in my opinion, and evidently other people's opinion, does have the power to stop the continued industrialization of our recreational and residential areas. Article 97, we could put that to work. I would really like, and I know I'm not alone, to hear more of how we can put that to work as opposed to, yeah, we don't know how to put that to work. The town should do what's good for its citizens. The town councilors need to do what's good for its citizens, please. Okay, wind power is great. We're not against wind power or saving the world, but bringing 2 billion megawatts, 2 billion watts of power across recreational and residential areas, whether it's on Cape Cod or in Maine, is not appropriate. There's better ways to do this. Okay, next steps. I'm going to be real quick here, real quick. Next steps. Most of you have these. If you didn't take one, please take one. It says at the top, here's what you can do next. You've heard a few times today about the Energy Facility Siting Board. That's the state agency that makes or breaks this. Okay? They make the decision about where these cables can land. It's not appropriate here. We need to make sure they understand that. This paragraph needs to go to these people. It's really simple. If they get 500 emails, 1,000 emails from us, that's going to get their attention, okay? Please take the 5 minutes and do it. If you want us to email it to you, there's sign-up sheets, we can do that. It's time for the town to notify the Energy Facility Siting Board in writing that the community does not support the proposed projects at Craigville Beach or Dowses Beach, and that the great majority of the citizens of Barnstable are dead set against allowing 2 billion watts of power to come ashore at our recreational areas. You've heard this tonight. You've heard other people tonight, and now it's time for you to be heard. Are you ready? They need to hear you in Boston. All those in favor of the town writing a letter to the EFSB withdrawing the community support for the projects at Craigville Beach and Dowses Beach signify by saying, write the letter. Thank you. And this is it. Second and lastly, all those opposed to bringing 2 billion watts of power underneath Craigville and Dowses Beaches, please signify by saying no cable. No cable. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle.
Thank you for that.
I'll now turn it over to Council President, Mr. Levesque, to see whether there are any council responses or comments.
I did want to invite, but not require, any counselor that they wanted to come up. I will just leave the microphone here if you'd like to speak. If not, and I'm just going to sit over here, but if you'd like to come up and speak. I would also appreciate each counselor, because we limited the folks to about 4 minutes, that you would also do the same. Thank you.
Not that tall, Paul. Not that tall.
Yeah. Good evening. I'm Paul Cusack, Town Councilor for Precinct 5. We heard a lot tonight, right? I think we actually ended up hearing 48 questions from folks, and by my calculations here, it looks like 22 out of 48 came from my precinct. So I felt like it might be appropriate to sort of respond to some of the things that I heard tonight, and so if you just give me 1 sec. I feel like we've really dug into some important details in a healthy and transparent way tonight. So a sincere, word of thank you to the petitioners who pulled this together. But I also feel like we need to expand the aperture a little bit to look at the entire picture. I think we should be saying to ourselves, this is our wind, and then asking ourselves what we want to do with it. We should be determining our own path forward as much as possible, and thereby reducing the spaces in which terms are dictated to us. This entire experience has felt predicated on a sense of a loss of control. This event tonight represents a retaking of some of the control lost by our citizens, and that should be applauded. It's a big step in the right direction to restore some sense of trust that your elected officials and town staff are always working in your best interests. Up until now, the tenor of this conversation has been that unwelcome things are being done to us, and this kind of experience can lend itself to a victimhood narrative in which information appears contradictory, and everyone appears to have a self-interested agenda, and our citizens feel like things are way out of their control. We need to reverse that with better communications and greater transparency. No one likes the feeling of lost control. So let's talk about that, control. Presently, our town is in a healthy financial shape. We heard about that last Thursday night. But is also trying to insure against various potential downsides. Those downsides include the future high financing costs of sewering. It also includes the towns potentially being forced by the Commonwealth to accept these wind power landings without any additional protections beyond those captured in the permitting process. True, Vineyard Wind might now turn out to be the only project seen through to completion around here. Possibly. And that might then turn out okay for us. But it could be a huge lost opportunity, like when the Cape refused federal dollars for sewering the entire Cape back in the 1970s, as mentioned earlier. We should stop nibbling around the edges of this conversation. Not only would I want us to get more environmental protections and more financial support out of these potential projects, but if we're going to be forced to take some of this, we should be getting a better deal on our rates. The wind is blowing here, and the infrastructure is being proposed for here. So we should be studying the feasibility of bulk energy purchases to reduce our local electricity rates, especially for our seniors living on fixed incomes. We should come together and set regional goals about potentially one day procuring renewable energy directly ourselves as a town at reduced rates. We could stop arguing over the crumbs and leverage the whole loaf for better environmental and financial outcomes for our citizens and for the town. I think it is an economic good for Barnstable that we have availability at our local substation. It is not a curse. It is an advantage. I believe we should seize this advantage. Former Council President Jimmy Crocker may or may not have had a soft spot for renewable energy a few years back when he initiated these conversations with the wind companies. But he did aggressively push for smart business decisions by the town to keep our taxes low and our services high and efficient. On top of that, I'm no economic nationalist, but I think it is fair to ask where the American companies are in this conversation. GE makes some of the equipment, but all the financing and much of the support services are coming from Northern Europe. Where are the American companies in this? Opposition to these projects have borne positive results about potential LLC exposures, the Dowses Causeway's vulnerability, about the unplanned approach to landings, and the scheduling of this event tonight. The town council has been listening and adapting to new information and trends. But a simple no, repeated frequently, does not make for good public policy. To get us over this hump, we should also reestablish the Water Resources Advisory Committee from our recent past. This committee of citizens and councilors can help us make sure that we accomplish what we were setting out to do originally, which is to make sure that our homeowners aren't left shouldering the financial burden of rebuilding our wastewater infrastructure alone. Together, we can get lower rates on electricity and faster, less expensive sewering. We can take control over this conversation and not feel manipulated by it. With sound coastal management practices and shrewd financial choices, we can leave this place better off than we found it, and that's part of why all your town councilors are up here trying to do this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cusack. Anybody else like to speak? Councilor Lucky?
Thank you. I don't have any prepared remarks. I listened tonight, and what I heard is this. This is my feedback to the communication I heard. I heard Mr. Els answer most of the questions. Attorney Nober also pitched in. They used "we" a lot. I don't know who "we" is. I don't think I heard that the town council was consulted and voted on these things. I'll say we, a town council, well, I'll just speak for myself. I can only speak for myself here. I am an elected representative. Mr. Els is not elected, and we are the direct voice of the people, and I feel that's important, and I think that's what I've heard tonight, is we need to have better communication with the people who elected us, and there needs to be a process where we listen to people better, and we have open communication, and we have more transparency in our decisions. We delegate a lot to Mr. Els. He's incredibly intelligent. He's very articulate. He has so much knowledge, but it shouldn't all be on him. We need to communicate better with you. That's what I've heard tonight, and that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucky. Anybody else like to speak? Okay. It's my turn, correct?
It's your turn.
Okay, thank you. And I wish
Please
everybody's...
keep it under 4 minutes.
What's that? Yes, I will do my best. So I just want to say thank you. It's unfortunate that, that so many left, because the good news is that we do have control with the Article 97. And we have taken action in regards to Article 97 a number of weeks ago when we, and it was honestly something that we had discussed at leadership meetings and staff meetings about what can we do with Article 97 if indeed Avangrid pulls out of the power purchase agreement with Connecticut, which I knew at the time, we all knew at the time, and it was even discussed at town council meetings, by the way, that they were in renegotiation in regards to their agreement with Connecticut. So with that, I asked Mark and I said, please, let's hold off signing anything in regards to any easements, Article 97 easements in regards to Park City Wind. So when that was announced, and they were very upfront, and I got to give credit with Avangrid, I asked them, please let us know before you make a official filing that you're going to be pulling out and you weren't able to renegotiate a deal with Connecticut. And they did. And so that moved forward. The resolve that we put in place, lots of whereases, that basically concludes that we, at this time, are not going to consider signing any power purchase agreement, at least until the EFSB gives their permitting. So that's where we stand, just Park City Wind. And then the announcement was made that Commonwealth Wind, basically, at the end of the day, in our DEIR report, we are not in favor of that project. So Article 97 notwithstanding. So we have shown that we have seen and recognized the fact that there is power in the Article 97. Now, where we go from here, as we go down the road, these are things that we have a form of government. We have a town council, town administrator form of government. So those types of things would have to be discussed in executive session, because sometimes you get into legalities and things of that nature that we can't discuss in public because it makes us liable, okay? Now, you did not have to sign a petition to have input at a town council. You could come to any town council meeting at any point in time. Now, I will not say that this was not a great event. This was a great event because it was an opportunity for us to get information to you to the best of our knowledge. So now I am recognizing, you hear me, that in Article 97, we recognize that. We did that as a council. Now, moving forward, I believe the best course of action is gather this information. Notice we didn't have Avangrid present today. This was not a meeting about Avangrid. This was a meeting with you and us. I purposely did it that way and asked them not to participate so that at a future date we could collect as much information here as possible and move forward and get your questions before, through a town council meeting, again, which you are welcome to come to, and it will most likely be our second meeting in November, that you could come and ask questions of or we will, the council will. You'll see the council on the dais ask questions of Avangrid to talk about things like safety, right? To talk about things like money, okay? And again, we agreed, and I know somebody said that was during COVID and the guise of, this was all done in a public process. You know, and like most committees, we were trying to do the best we could in the midst of COVID and everything was remote. I understand that was a challenge for some people. Some people actually participated that never participated before. That's why we include a hybrid. If you come to a town council meeting, you can actually participate remotely in a public hearing or public comment. So right in our hearing room. So now, what I ask you is please continue to stay engaged. Please continue to reach out to us. I know Town Manager Els has said, please ask him questions. The reason why Town Manager Els was answering a lot of the questions today is because he would do a better job than any counselor. That's why he's in the position that he's in. With over 30+ years of working for the town of Barnstable, I could not answer those questions. Could I answer them, most of them? Sure. But as well as him, no. Because I wasn't the president of the council when these first two agreements, Vineyard Wind and Park City Wind, were put in place. Okay, and again, I'm not casting blame on those past councilors, and that's most of that, good portion of that was done even before COVID was in place. So I so appreciate you all being here. I am going to stop talking, and I thank you very much for being here. Again, I wish everybody stayed till the very end, but maybe you can pass it on and they can watch it on YouTube at a later date. But I also want to thank, and again, Mark Els, our staff, they did a great job answering those questions, and I want to give a great thanks to Michael Ford for coming here and moderating this, Council Clum, all the councilors that showed up, and every participation, and the 4 that went and got your signatures. I thank you very much, again, for this opportunity, and I was very encouraged. And please, and you know what? I got to be honest with you, I was a little anxious how this was all going to play out, and it was perfect. You couldn't ask for a better audience, better participation. I know some people were angry, but I just can't thank you enough for the level of grace that you guys showed tonight. Thank you very much. Hold on. With that, I get a motion to adjourn because this is still a town council meeting. And so we can we do a roll call vote, please? Actually, no. Can I just do a raise of hands? Okay. Can you signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye? That's unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.